I opened a travel agency in the world of cultivation. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 401. There were loud fighting sounds in these three directions. Within 2 minutes, large patches of bright light began to appear in the directions of the 5 sea fields. This was the reaction when someone broke into the protective formation of the sea field. Afterwards, the croaking of wooden frogs began to be heard everywhere on the island. Some of the calls were close to the town, and some were far away from the town. But no matter how close or far away, these pirates were approaching the town. And because the formation was not completed, the side where Yang Zhao and Yang Zhao were guarding was the fastest place for pirates to attack. One by one, short or huge figures climbed out of the water, screaming and rushing towards the town. All members of Class 4, throw. 11 or 12 little bean men poked their heads out from the roofs of several houses on the outermost edge. There were several sounds of broken glass, and green flames exploded everywhere, illuminating the black shadows. In the green light, the Taoists saw that these pirates emerging from the water were actually many marine creatures, including fish, shrimps, crabs, hard-shelled and soft-shelled ones, some the size of a finger, and some 2 or 3 meters long, reflecting the diversity of species in the sea. These creatures were densely packed together, and it was unknown whether they were conscious or not. These marine creatures were startled by the green flames. The advancing team stopped for a moment, and then several large water balls appeared woodenly, and bang hit the green flames. The green flames, which were originally crammed to a point, burned along the water flow. The originally small flames were connected under the action of the water flow, and the flame area increased more than 10 times. A few hissing sounds rang out, and the dense marine creatures no longer entangled with the flames, but bypassed the flames like Moses opening the sea, and continued to advance towards the town. Yang Zhao looked back at the workers, who had not gone far, and directly took out a large box from the Kyankan bag, which contained 70 or 80 bottles of white phosphorus. She opened the lid of the box, lifted the big box with magic, and flew it over the heads of these marine creatures. Then a big fireball suddenly blasted up, and the big box exploded into thousands of pieces like a firework. With a bang, dense green flames fell from the sky, covering a large area of sea creatures. A hissing sound suddenly sounded, and many marine creatures were affected by the flames from the sky, and a strange sea of fire formed. Some of the marine creatures behind rushed too fast, and had no time to brake, and they also rushed into the sea of fire. This green flame was like a thorn in the flesh, and once it was touched, it could not be removed. The fire burned them, and they rolled all over the ground. The flames also spread to other creatures as they rolled. Everyone in Class 6, throw. Everyone in Class 8, throw. Yang Zhao watched with interest as the little beam people smashed bottles down from the roof in batches. Pieces of green flames dispersed into the sea amid wailing, a scene of hell. It's pretty nice to have more of these, will-o'-the-wisp. Yang Zhao waved her hand, and a small green spark floated from the ground into her hand. The color is quite pure. She shook off the small spark, and a dozen black balls flew out from nowhere. These balls flew around her quickly, bringing with them a whistling sound. Don't worry about the little thing below. Our opponent is here too. A blue light suddenly attacked Yang Zhao, and the small balls around her found the direction like sharks smelling blood. With a bang, they gathered together and smashed the blue light, and then quickly resumed their original flight trajectory. Found it. Yang Zhao smiled with narrowed eyes, waved the whip in her hand, and rushed out with the whistling balls around her. A thunderclap sounded from Yang Zhao's whip, illuminating a triumphant figure. Haha, it's still a new face. Then, a huge door-like thing rose from under the thin figure, and slammed towards Yang Zhao. The small balls spinning around Yang Zhao grew bigger. Bang, 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 like cannonballs. They hit the door panel, and knocked it crooked. Then Yang Zhao's whip swung out a ray of light, heading straight for the short door. A shield lit up in front of him, and the ray of light slipped after hitting the shield, and flew into the sea in the distance. With a bang, the seawater mixed with sand and stones was blown up dozens of meters by the ray of light, and fell to the ground with a bang. The marine life that landed there was in bad luck and was blown to pieces, and the smell of blood rushed up. Yang Zhao and the other man moved around and fought to one place. The area affected by the two men's fight was too wide, and even if they accidentally missed their moves, they could set off a sea of blood below. Yang Zhao and other foundation building cultivators could only hide far away. After a few moves between the two men, the houses in the town were also affected, and houses fell down one after another. This caught the little beam people who were ambushing on the houses by surprise. Many houses would whoosh and ignite green flames after they fell down, and then the entire collapsed wooden house would burn in less than a minute. The little beam people suffered heavy blows from friendly forces after the battle started today, and suffered a large number of casualties for the first time. A charge horn sounded, and many little beam people who were not affected jumped down directly with bottles in their arms, and rushed to the marine life below. The reason why they launched the charge in a hurry was that they were afraid that those who did not do anything would be affected by others' battlefields. These little beam people rushed out and first threw the bottles into the enemy army like grenades in 3 stages. When the white phosphorus bottles on their bodies were all used up, the little beam people rushed up with the small iron pickaxes, small iron shovels, small sickles and other farm tools tied to their bodies, and started a hand-to-hand fight. Although these things are farm tools, they are well made and the materials are generous, and the blades are also very sharp. These things were swung and chopped, and the smaller marine creatures were directly cut in half, and the larger ones' heads could be dug into a hole. Seeing that there were houses burning in the town, Yang Zhao and the short pirate tacitly moved the battlefield to a distance. Yang Zhao was afraid that the two of them would cause too much damage to the town, and it would be difficult for the pirates to recover afterwards. And the pirate was also afraid that the two of them would cause too much damage to the town. If the materials for building the formation were burned, he would suffer a great loss. The two people had different goals, but the same thoughts. As the two of them went away, some pirates with cultivation began to attack the town. Among these pirates, some were also sea creatures, and Yang Zhao even saw several birds. When these people rushed up, the 5 foundation building monks who had gathered in Zhentao town also took up their weapons and waited for them. Yang Zhao pressed his wrist, and the giant long spear appeared in his hand. He took out the fingerlings who from the Kyankan bag and threw it into the air. Then he pressed his body and rushed back at the pirates who rushed up. "Hey, brothers, chop this little girl up for me." Roar. The people behind Yang Zhao were not to be outdone. Someone also shouted, "Everyone, follow Brother Daoist Yang." Yes. The two sides started to fight head on. Chapter 402. The night was dark, but the sea area of Black Pearl Island was extremely lively. Looking down from the sky, the coastal areas of the island were full of fire, and the red flames were mixed with green flames, which was very strange. In the sea area around the island, 5 giant magic arrays were emitting bright fluorescence. Under the illumination of the fluorescence, the sea water around the entire array had turned red, and various fragments would float up from time to time in the water. Looking into the distance, giant sea beasts were tumbling up and down in the water, stirring up the sea area. Huge waves rushed into the sky, and the fishy and salty rain quickly surrounded the entire Black Pearl Island. There were lightning and thunder in the sky above Black Pearl Island. With the help of the light of lightning, several figures could be seen fighting in the sky. Layers of marine creatures emerged from the water and climbed onto the shore and were pressed back by the monks and little bean people on the shore. The divine light mixed with magic was colliding everywhere in the shouts and killings, and the loud noise brought by the palm thunder was mixed with dark blood light, and the smell of blood was spread across the entire island by the wind. The physical fitness of this Kyanji bean is still not good enough. 2 little bean people were hiding on a shaky roof, holding a pen and paper in their hands, watching and writing. This Kyanji bean can only deal with these broken fish and shrimps. It is weak and fragile. Adults don't even think about it, but it is still very useful as a robot with a thermal weapon. I feel it is not as good as our robot dog. What do you mean? Robot dogs are more expensive. Why don't you say it? Besides, there are some things that you can't understand unless you see them with your own eyes. The pen in his hand was about to write sparks, and he was still muttering a few words. They are really fighting. When the fight is over, how much of our camera can be recovered? It's good to be able to recover 1/10. We can only pray that the storage card inside is intact. The two people muttered to each other, and suddenly a flash of inspiration came to them, and they heard a click under them. Oh no, the beam is broken. Jump. Unfortunately, the two men reacted too slowly. When the house collapsed, they were trapped inside. They barely had time to struggle. The two little bean men turned into two grey-white beans. The notebook that fell beside them instantly caught fire and burned clean. Fortunately, it was not just these two little bean men who used such primitive tools as paper to record the battlefield. This is the first time I know that seafood is so hard to kill. Li Baining raised a pickaxe and smashed it down, like he was digging the ground. Fortunately, he had also followed other little bean men to farm for 2 days these days. Otherwise, he, a child who grew up in the city, would not have seen a farm tool like a pickaxe. I'm an England person, and this is the first time I have seen so many seafood species. I have seen them in pots before. This is the first time I have seen this kind of attacking people. Zhilan on the side also took a small pickaxe, which she used much more easily than Li Baining. These days, she had money to change her residence, bought new clothes, and her personality became more and more cheerful. The most important thing is that she paid for herself to go to a high school, although this high school is not very good, and she may not be able to pass the college entrance examination. Since then, she has been working in the cultivation world for a short time each time. A few people in their group formed a small team and held a corner in front of the warehouse. This is a very backward position, mainly a front position. They can't grab it, and they can't get through. Because the area, where the most intense fighting, is too dense with flames and various animal corpses, the little beam people who serve as soldiers can shuttle in the flames like swimming fish without falling behind. When they go in, they are basically like entering a maze. They can't find people around them after running a few steps, so they can only pick up leaks here. The seafood that can run to their place is basically long-legged and can run, such as crabs and shrimps, and there are not many, just sparse. These things have hard shells, and farm tools such as sickles are useless, but alternative blunt tools such as pickaxes are very useful to them. Although this kind of creatures have strong vitality, there are not many people in their group. 7 or 8 people can still beat one. However, the seafood they beat was a bit horrible. Basically, it was torn into pieces in the meat paste in the end. I don't want to eat seafood anymore after watching it. Li Baining muttered a few words in a low voice, and then he felt a strange sound above his head. He subconsciously raised his head and saw a big bird swooping down and gave him a claw. Puff! A pale bean fell to the ground. Brother Li! Zhilan exclaimed, swung up the small pickaxe, and before he could make the next move, he was hit by the big bird and turned into a pale bean and fell to the ground. The two little bean people standing next to Zhilan were not spared. The big bird flapped its wings, and the little bean people who rushed up with various farm tools were blown by the strong wind and could not keep their bodies steady. They could only watch the big bird rise into the air and then dive again. In just 2 or 3 times, their team was wiped out. Then, the bird lowered its flying altitude, carefully observed the nearby buildings, and then flew into the sky with a whistle. The pirate who was originally ambushing in the dark lowered his voice and said to the people beside him, "We found the warehouse, brothers, let's sneak over there quietly." Okay. After they stared at the mad wolf, they opened the door and used the magic to illuminate the entire empty warehouse, with anger in their eyes. Damn it, it's really clean, not a single piece was left. Lu Zhaosi also reported that their island owner didn't gather the vein opening leaves at all. He was fooled and didn't even know it. The person with the 0 gritted his teeth. Let's go look for it somewhere else. The two pirates walked out of the warehouse and threw a few big fireballs directly to ignite them. Then they used them to touch other buildings. In the end, they only searched out a large amount of food in a cellar. But food can't compare with vein opening leaves. This pirate was not very willing to use his kayak and bag to carry these food. Damn it, let's go, send a signal. In the rainstorm, 6 big fireballs rose one after another above the island and exploded. These big fireballs all told that the pirates didn't find what they wanted. Will those poor guys take them with them to retreat? Impossible, there are our people there too. If he sees us, he will definitely tell us. What a damn bad luck. If I had known that there was nothing, I would have led you to that construction site. A big bird with a small conch hanging on its neck circled above the heads of these pirates, and its voice was sharp when it opened its mouth. Second brother, the boss said that we should go find the owner of Black Pearl Island. It is said that the little girl has the Kyankan belt. The boss suddenly asked, is it the island owner in the foundation building stage? What does he look like? The bird flapped its wings, and the conch on its chest lit up a light curtain that was more than 2 meters long and 1 meter wide. In the light curtain was Yang Zhao practicing martial arts with a spear. Chapter 403. The pirates' actions naturally could not be hidden from the people on the island. Anyway, no matter what they did, the pirates' changes did not seem to be a sign of retreat. As long as they did not retreat and stayed on the island, they were enemies. And there is a simplest strategy to deal with the enemy, which is to do everything the opposite of the enemy. If the enemy wants to stay, you drive him away, and if the enemy wants to leave, you keep him. Anyway, you should not let the enemy go as he pleases. These people who eat this bowl of rice and take this silver may not really risk their lives, but they dare not do it in vain. This will ruin their reputation and make it difficult for them to find the next job. Mortals can die and everything will disappear, but it will only take 100 years. But people who practice Taoism cannot. People who practice Taoism have a long lifespan, and they value their reputation more than ordinary people. If they practice well, this reputation will follow them for hundreds of years. A good reputation is not easy to accumulate, and it is much easier to lose it. Otherwise, why would they come out to find a job honestly? Just give up your face and become a pirate. After all, the job of a pirate is really profitable. So the scene appeared on Black Pearl Island. The pirates shouted, brothers, find the location of that little girl and come with me to make a fortune. Roar. The cultivators on the island shouted back, Daoists, stop them. Yes. The two sides chased each other and entangled in a fierce fight. Yang Zhao licked the fishy and salty raindrops on his face, feeling his brain boiling, his eyes churning with anger, and his hands were full of ruthless moves. From the beginning of the fight, Yang Zhao knew that today's battle would not be easy. These pirates were too slippery. She faced these people like an adult against a child, and was fooled by them from the beginning. Although the pirates used the same low-level spells and techniques that were common on the market as Yang Zhao, their understanding of spells and weapons was not on the same level. If Yang Zhao could still rely on her own cultivation and magic weapons to suppress the soldiers of the Sujin clan in Luoyang, she would not have these advantages against these pirates on Hesu Island. The pirates had practiced for longer than Yang Zhao, and their magic was more flexible than Yang Zhao's. Their fighting skills were not on the same level as Yang Zhao's. No matter how hard Yang Zhao practiced, she would not fight with others and would not suffer any losses, so naturally she would not learn any experience. The consequence of learning behind closed doors is no progress. To fight with others, you need experience, and this experience not only requires the accumulation of time, but also requires an environment for frequent fighting. But she didn't have it. She didn't have that much time, nor did she have this environment. So now, she could only watch the pirate she was entangled with, while dealing with her. He still had the energy to destroy the buildings on the island. The entire Black Pearl Island is now Yang Zhao's property. Every house here has an owner, and they were all built by the workers. There is no place like home, and now, these pirates don't even let their dog houses go. We have so many crops planted on our island. If the seawater rains, the seedlings in the fields will probably be burned to death. Thinking of this, Yang Zhao's anger grew stronger, and his moves became more ruthless. Although Yang Zhao did not take care of the land much, he had turned it from a wasteland into a place suitable for farming in front of her eyes. The seedlings planted were now as tall as her ankles, and the small seedlings and beans in the fields were fried and eaten by Yang Zhao, which greatly satisfied her appetite. Now thinking that the vegetables were gone, and it would be difficult to grow them in the future, Yang Zhao almost cried out of grievance. Even if it was seafood, people couldn't stand eating it every day. No matter how much you like someone, if you use his voice as an alarm clock every day, you won't like him after a month. Yang Zhao's eyes turned blood red, and his hands became more and more powerful. The situation of the war changed rapidly, and she didn't know when something happened. The pirate who was fighting against her began to give up the slippery delaying tactics and chose to fight head on regardless of his own strength. This pirate is a sea beast with gills. It looks like a fish, but not a fish. It has 4 legs and is more than 3 meters tall. It is a short and fat oval. It is doubtful how its 4 thin legs can support such a large tonnage. Yang Zhao has seen this thing in her dreams. She has fought with him more than 100 times in her dreams, so she knows very well where the pirate's weakness is. But it is useless to know. She can't hit it, her hands can't keep up, and it's useless to know more in her mind. Yang Zhao knows her own shortcomings and is afraid that the other party will be prepared. She has been forbearing and thinking about how to take advantage of the situation. When this pirate gave up the slippery delaying tactics and chose to confront head on, Yang Zhao knew that her chance had come. She stacked the fingling beads layer by layer, only protecting her front and back torso, twisted the Gianna long spear in her hand, and planned to trade injuries with the other party and take his life. Yang Zhao dodged left and right and took 2 moves from the opponent. Seeing an opening, he rushed forward and thrust the tip of his spear into the opponent's vital parts, while the spirit power that had been waiting for a long time rushed into the opponent's meridians like a flood. Not satisfied with this, Yang Zhao used both hands to fight. With a slight click, the dragon spear crushed the opponent's spine. This incident happened in a flash, catching everyone off guard. The eyes of the 2-meter-long beast-shaped pirate were filled with surprise and despair. How the hell did you know? He didn't finish his words, and the 2-meter-long beast body fell from the sky to the ground with a plop, splashing countless dust. Chapter 404, Becoming a Demon. Yang Zhao's brain went blank, and the whole world turned red. The originally dark sky was covered with a layer of blood mist. In the mist, Yang Zhao found that he seemed to have changed the world. Where is this? Why am I here? Yang Zhao clenched the Gianna long spear in her hand, frowned slightly and examined this strange world. This blood red color indicated ominousness. The sky and the earth squeezed her, the air laughed at her, and the creatures hidden in the darkness stared at her. The sight was aggressive, licking her skin inch by inch with sticky, fishy, warm, and wet. There was no way to avoid it, no way to retreat. Fear slowly climbed in the corners and gradually invaded her heart. Where is this? Why is she here? Exclamation mark. She shouldn't be here. It was so dark. She should go back to school, otherwise the school teacher would come to find her. Thinking about it, Yang Zhao began to look around, looking for taxis nearby. Obviously, in this terrifying and weird space, there were no taxis and buses in the classic ghost stories. The ghosts in this world are a bit unreliable. They don't even know the classic horror element of ghost stories. Yang Zhao complained in her heart, trying hard to distract herself from the fear, otherwise she was afraid that she would collapse and scream. After all, she was really afraid of ghosts since she was a child. No, in the modern social science values, ghosts are feudal superstitions. Why should I believe that there are really ghosts? Yes, how could there be ghosts in this world? I just scared myself. I'm not afraid. But before she finished her words, the ghost came. The ghost bared its fangs and claws, stretched out its black and red ghost claws, and pounced on her. Yang Zhao shuddered in fear, and stabbed out with the dragon spear in her hand. No, how can I have this thing in my hand? Before she could figure out the result, the ghost turned around, and dodged the corner of the wall, and pounced on her again with a claw. Yang Zhao swung his spear, and the tip of the spear swept across the opponent's waist and abdomen. But who knew that the ghost actually flew up, not only dodged the spear, but also circled in the sky for half a circle, and swooped down like an eagle. Yang Zhao put away his gun, pointed the tip of the gun at the ghost that jumped up, and waited for the other party to string him a candide horse. Is there something wrong with this gun? Why do I use it so smoothly? Or is there something wrong with me? But it was obvious that the other party was not a fool, and he really could fly. Yang Zhao watched him fly up, change direction and jump again. What kind of place is this? Freedom, democracy, civilization, and harmony, demons, and ghosts, please leave. Yang Zhao didn't know where he got a round object from, aimed at the ghost's head, and threw it out. The ball was hanging with a humming sound, and was extremely fast, forcing the ghost to dodge. While the other party turned around, Yang Zhao thrust his spear forward, stabbed the other party's heart and stirred it. The red and black blood gushed out like a flood that had been opened. It was so cool. Looking at the ghost that fell to the ground with a bang, Yang Zhao felt like he had drunk iced sour plum soup in the dog days of summer, and he was so cool that he trembled all over. But why was the place where the ghost fell so far away from her? No, why was there no land under her feet? Was she flying? Was she a ghost too? When did he die? How come I don't know? Is this the underworld? She actually killed a ghost in the underworld. You know, when she was at home, she only killed fish, not even chickens. Now that she is capable, she dares to kill ghosts. However, it would be better if there were more ghosts for her to kill. That shot not only killed the ghost, but also stabbed out the fear in her heart. But too little of this fear went out, leaving too much, and she was impatient and groping around. Who knew that what she thought would come true? In a blink of an eye, two more appeared behind. These two ghosts don't look like the previous one at all. They are lying on their backs, their eyes grow as they please, and their bodies grow recklessly. They really don't care about other people's feelings at all. Since these two ghosts don't care about other people's feelings, Yang Zhao doesn't want to care about the other party's feelings either. It would be better to stab them directly. The corners of Yang Zhao's mouth lifted up uncontrollably. Although there was one more ghost this time, Yang Zhao felt that the actions of the two ghosts were familiar. She took the Gianna long spear and rushed over. Point, sweep, horizontal, pick any angle that was tricky, the spear would stab there. After 2 rounds, she found that she could completely predict the next move of the two ghosts. Could it be that these two ghosts have killed many times by themselves? This ghost is pretty good. Yang Zhao smashed the top of a ghost's head with a spear, and then within 2 moves, he stabbed another ghost in the heart. The bodies of the two ghosts fell to the ground with a bang. Bang. It feels pretty good. Yang Zhao's golden red eyes were full of excitement. Flying to the bodies of the two ghosts, he stabbed them twice with the gun. It feels really good. Oh my, how can there be such a pleasant thing in the world to kill ghosts? But when the ghosts die, shouldn't they disappear into thin air? These ghosts are dead. Why are there still corpses? Could it be that this is not a ghost, but a human? No, how can a human fly? In the world of science, how can a human fly? Since humans can't fly, then the flying ones must be ghosts. Haha. Since there are ghosts in the world, shouldn't she invite a Taoist priest or a monk to help them to transcend? But it costs money to invite such a thing. She has no money. When the next ghost came, Yang Zhao was still thinking about it. She herself was a registered Taoist priest, although there was as much water in it as the Pacific Ocean. But she was a Taoist priest, there was no doubt about it. I'm a Taoist priest, why do I need an outsider? I can transcend myself. No, how about transcending with magic? Direct transcendence with physical means. When she made up her mind, there were already 7 or 8 people lying on the ground. 2 of them were not dead yet, and they were trembling and trying to crawl out. They were talking in a jumbled way that Yang Zhao couldn't understand, which made Yang Zhao upset. Miss them, don't worry, I'll take you both there. Ah. Yang Zhao smiled and shot the 2 of them one by one, kicked them twice, and when he saw that they were motionless, he squatted aside and thought about salvation. Salvation seems to require the gods to be invited. How to invite gods? Can the gods be poked? Would it feel better to poke the gods? When 7 or 8 ghosts pounced on them, Yang Zhao's joy almost overflowed. Invite the gods. She wanted to invite the gods. Praise the gods, reminisce about the past, give tributes to the gods, and ask the gods to do things. A huge throne broke the limitations of time and space, and was pulled out by a thin golden aura. Sitting on the throne was a middle-aged man with a dignified look. Although his face was a little blurry and his figure was not particularly tall, just sitting on the throne made people feel like they wanted to worship him. He slowly opened his indifferent eyes and glanced leisurely at Black Pearl Island, indifferent to the lively scenes on the island and outside the island. He scanned the entire island, and finally his eyes fell on the little girl below who was covered in blood. The girl's body and face were covered in blood and flesh, but she had a dazzling smile on her face. She danced with a spear with great vigor and used various low-level spells smoothly. The moves and spells were tricky and vicious, all aimed at the enemy's vital points. The goal was very clear, that is, to kill people. This little girl is the so-called island owner. She has a Kayankan bag on her. The Khmer leaves of Black Pearl Island are all on her. Brothers, kill her for me. This is a bit tricky, men. Let's go together. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 405, Asking God. The heavy rain on the island put out the fire in the town. Only in scattered places, one or two small green sparks were still burning stubbornly. Yang Zhao was floating in the air with blood all over her body. There were several corpses of seafood lying on the ground. She stabbed those below to death, but she also had a few more holes in her body. However, Shenroi didn't teach her anything else in the past year, but he taught her how to avoid this matter. He was even the first one to teach her. Back then, Shenroi used the flying small pieces of wood and the piercing pain to teach Yang Zhao how to hide and where to hide. Last year, the little bean man who came from Guafuminqiang focused on explaining the human anatomy diagram to Yang Zhao. This year, the two little bean man political commissars taught Yang Zhao what kind of movements could be done to avoid the vital parts of his body as quickly as possible. All of these teaching results were reflected today. Although Yang Zhao was injured and her body looked bloodshot, she didn't hurt any vital parts, and the spear in her hand was still whirring. But this person who looked fine, if you face her, you will know that she is definitely sick. Yang Zhao is not ugly, but at this moment, she has a weird smile on her face, with a row of white big teeth, and a touch of excitement on her cheeks. Looking up, the black and blood red in her eyes are entangled and swirling, and the originally powerful golden light is bullied into a narrow arc at the edge of the pupil. Anyone with a little common sense of cultivation knows that this person is possessed by a demon. A person possessed by a demon has no reason, does not know the risks, and either hurts others or hurts himself. Most people will stay away from such things, and these pirates naturally understand. But understanding is one thing, and doing is another. This Yang Zhao is the owner of the Black Pearl Island, and she has a Kayankan bag on her body. It is said that she spent hundreds of thousands of taels of silver to buy more than a dozen flying boats in Yunshan City. Now, all the mature open-veined leaves on Black Pearl Island are suspected to be on her. Is that a person? That is the god of wealth made of gold, and it is pure gold. Who would go crazy because of gold? Even if gold bites your hand, it is still gold. As for those who died in her hands, they deserved it. If 2 more people die, they can get more money when they divide the spoils. Do you still expect them pirates to pay attention to the brotherhood? Are you kidding? Exclamation mark. But it is true that the points are prickly. Looking at the people lying below, the pirates who came over were not in a hurry to come up. They wanted to wait for some time to get a few helpers to work together. The cultivators hired by Yang Zhao next to them also automatically hid to the side when they saw this scene. People who are possessed by demons can't tell good from bad people, and they can't reason. Anyone who gets close to her and is stabbed by her gun must consider themselves unlucky. Didn't you see that all the pirates here have died? Now on the entire Black Pearl Island, although the sea on the island is fierce, there are not many real lives. Especially in the foundation building stage and the golden elixir stage, whether it is the island guards or the pirates, except for the few under Yang Zhao, the rest will be injured at most. The most dead are those sea creatures who have not yet reached the key training stage. Both sides are mainly engaged in a struggle. Since it is not their own business, the Black Pearl Island will not risk their lives for this little silver. As long as they entangle these pirates until dawn, these people will naturally disperse. No pirate wants to face the court head-on, especially the court of the Great Zhao dynasty, which is full of military power and is interested in centralized power. As for the pirates, it is easier to say. After the brothers and sisters they brought entangled the manpower and material resources on the island, the remaining few can quietly go to the island to collect property. Otherwise, why did they drive a large number of marine creatures ashore in order to share the firepower? Finally, 7 or 8 people gathered here, and the pirates felt confident. They rushed up again and killed Yang Zhao when they were surrounded. Yang Zhao, who was possessed by the devil, didn't know what pain or fear was. The giant long spear in her hand grew a little longer, from more than 2 meters to more than 3 meters now. When she wielded it, it was full of vigor and there was a faint sound of a dragon's roar. Ordinary people couldn't get close to her. An inch longer, an inch stronger, which was reflected in her hands. Ordinary magic weapons would break when they collided with the giant long spear, and would break when they bumped into it. The magic weapons of those pirates were forced to avoid the giant long spear, and most of them wanted to use magic to break the giant long spear. Magic weapon. Although there were 8 of them, they were more timid in the battle. A magic weapon that fits the hands is an expensive thing for a cultivator. These pirates are not from aristocratic families, and magic weapons are not something they can change whenever they want. The pirates on the island, who were not entangled by others, were still gathering towards Yang Zhao. The war in the open sea and the sky gradually calmed down. There are more than a dozen giant unstage pirates in the entire Black Pig Island area. Now they all stopped attacking tacitly and turned their attention to Black Pearl Island. In the air above Black Continent Island, or throne stood quietly. From the appearance of this throne, the air seemed to become thicker. The vague sense of crisis made them tremble with fear. All their senses were reminding them to escape quickly, but they couldn't take a step. Or rather, they didn't dare to take a step. There was a big fish giant unstage pirate who was more than 20 meters long. He wanted to sneak into the seabed and run away, but after swimming a few meters, he felt a cold gaze fixed on him. He turned around stiffly, and a weird smile was forced out of his stiff big fish face. "Don't worry, I'll just float here and won't move." After waiting for a while, the big fish exhaled fiercely after noticing that the gaze had moved away. "Damn it, who collected the information? If I don't skin it, when I go back, I've lived in vain all these years." The giant unstage cultivators like Emolin and Tata, who stirred up the storm in the sea, shrank their bodies and returned to their human forms. They looked around, trying to see whose ancestor the person on the island was. When they saw that the pirates next to them were also honest and didn't dare to run, Emolin's heart, which had been lifted up, finally let go. He said, with such a high level of cultivation, who would be a pirate? The money they robbed as pirates is not enough to cover the cost of their 1 or 2 steps out. Without the giant and sea creatures stirring up the storm in the sea, the giant and in the sky was also quiet. Once these giant unstage cultivators and sea creatures stopped moving, the fishy and salty rain on the island stopped. But the strange thing is that even with such a big change, the cultivators and sea creatures below the giant unstage on the island seemed to be blind and didn't see anything. The two sides were still fighting fiercely. Only Xiao Dao people and a few people on the entire island noticed something was wrong and stopped fighting. As for why they discovered it, the reason was very simple. The groups of marine creatures that had been surging up the sea without regard for their lives were becoming fewer and fewer and gradually disappeared. Chapter 406, Sharpening the Knife. When a little bean man chopped the ground with his sickle, he realized that there were no enemies in front of him. Alas, they were like flies just now, and now they are gone. Another little bean man, dodging the magic spells flying around, came to another conclusion. There shouldn't be any. Look at how lively those cultivators are fighting. It was dark, and the air was filled with a damp smell after the rain. The remaining little bean men looked at the devastated town with heartache. Where will these workers sleep when they come back? Pray that it won't rain these few days. Alas, there are still many children on the island. How many children will catch a cold if they are so anxious to hide today and it rains so hard? There is not even a radio on this island. We can't contact each other if something happens. The pirates have not retreated yet, so the little bean men can only gather together and be careful to be on guard to prevent the counterattack of marine creatures. Yang Zhao here is still fighting with those pirates. This time the pirates have more people, so it is easier to face Yang Zhao, who is obviously trapped in his inner demons. Yang Zhao was like a trapped beast, surrounded by them, and she fought left and right without any results, and had several more scars on her body. These pirates wanted to wear her down. The man on the throne saw that no giant dared to move within a radius of dozens of miles, so he lowered his eyes and looked at Yang Zhao, who was trapped below. He watched Yang Zhao's injuries gradually increase but ignored it. His expression was indifferent, as if Yang Zhao's life and death were not in his consideration at all. If Yang Zhao was conscious now, he would probably jump up in anger. This person still had a golden smell of incense on him. He accepted Yang Zhao's tribute, but did not do anything. Anyone who encountered such a pitfall would jump up in anger. But now Yang Zhao was unconscious, so naturally she couldn't get angry. She was caught in a dilemma among these pirates. She could take care of the left, but not the right, the front but not the back. The giant long spear was hit, and sparks were emitted, and 3 of the 16-sided fengling pearls had been broken. But even so, the smile on Yang Zhao's face did not fade, and even showed a trend of getting crazier. The 2 little bean people who were always paying attention to Yang Zhao frowned. The 2 of them had nothing else to do on the island, and the most important thing was to coach Yang Zhao. This time, when the pirates attacked, they did not fight back, but stared at her closely in a safe corner. The main purpose was to find out Yang Zhao's shortcomings from this battle. In this kind of thing, the person involved is confused, but the bystander is clear. It is difficult for the person involved to find his own shortcomings, and external help is needed at this time. Even though the vision was not good at night and Yang Zhao was flying high, the 2 political commissars did not put down their work. Therefore, although they could not observe the changes in Yang Zhao's eyes, her chaotic body language and her self-disregarding actions were successfully captured by the 2. Later, the 2 little bean people also saw the glowing Buddha that emerged from Yang Zhao's body. But they were not familiar with the various spells in the cultivation world, and they didn't know what it was. When they saw it, a little bean man picked up a stone from the ground and threw it up hard, but found that the height was too low and there was no way to interfere with the battle. What should we do? We don't have any hot weapons, so we can't help. It's probably useless to give them to us. We can only use a small hot weapon at most. We can't even move a larger one. Now drones are the most useful. You are right. The 2 of them muttered a few words and began to analyze the battle situation quietly. As Yang Zhao was getting more and more disadvantaged, they became more and more anxious and began to shout, trying to call for help from Yang Zhao. Help! Yang Zhao, the island master Yang, can't hold on any longer. One of the political commissars, Xiaodaran, stopped the other one who was shouting. Are you stupid? How can you shout like that? Look at me. He put his hands on both sides of his lips and shouted at the top of his voice. As long as you rescue the island master Yang, everyone will get 10,000 taels of silver. The other one's eyes lit up, and he also shouted while jogging. Help the island master Yang, 10,000 taels of silver per person. Although their voices were low, the people fighting in Zhentao town were all sharp-eyed and sharp-eared, and heard these words clearly. 10,000 taels of silver. For each person. Such a large amount, even a giant unstage cultivator would be jealous, not to mention the foundation building cultivators and the sea creatures. Now, both the enemy and the enemy were excited. The pirates were excited when they heard about the silver, and the cultivators hired by Yang Zhao knew that she was rich and powerful. They also knew that these 2 little bean people followed Yang Zhao every day, and they should keep their words. Even if they didn't keep their words, there was only a 50% chance, and some people wanted to take a gamble. This is 10,000 taels of silver. Dao Yang Zhao is under siege. Fellow Daoists, save him. The pirates over there were not to be outdone. 10,000 taels of silver for each person. Brothers, this little girl has countless silver in her pocket. Kill her and rob her of the silver. Well, both sides were like chicken blood, using the more powerful spells, and the magic weapons that they were reluctant to use at the beginning were also sacrificed. Both sides wanted to stab their opponents to death first, and then go to Yang Zhao to collect the silver. You are strong. I'm strong too. You have a special trick. I'm not bad either. The 2 sides inevitably entangled again. Both sides used special tricks, which meant that in a short period of time, no matter whether it was the robbers or the cultivators hired by Yang Zhao, it was difficult to separate hands to fight for the silver. The siege on Yang Zhao's side was still not lifted. Xiaodaran was completely furious. Damn it, what should we do? Yang Zhao's wounds are getting more and more. Even if she is a cultivator, it's not good to bleed so much. They were soldiers who knew best the harm caused by unstoppable bleeding. The two people were anxiously looking around, trying to find a helper for Yang Zhao. As a result, one of them saw the bright figure on the throne looking up. I just saw the one floating motionlessly on it raised his head. Oh, he lowered his head again. Is he conscious? This is not the dead thing we thought it was. Who cares what it is? Just shout it and try, he said without thinking twice, and started yelling at the top of his voice. Hey, the one in the sky, what are you doing sitting there? Can you help Yang Zhao? The older mortal sitting in the sky, can you lend a hand? Yang Zhao will definitely reward you handsomely. After shouting several times, the one on the throne lowered his head indifferently and glanced at the two little bean people. The little bean people saw his movements of looking at him and shook their hands excitedly. Older mortal, please help us, we will definitely reward you handsomely. A waste who can't even break through his own inner demon. Is there any need to live? The voice was not loud, but it spread throughout the island and spread quickly. Even Emolin and Tata, who were far away, could hear it clearly. This language was not a language familiar to any of the little bean people, but strangely, everyone present understood it. If you want this knife to be sharp, you must have a whetstone. The giant on stage present was silent and dared not move. The pirates and hired monks who were fighting fiercely also slowly stopped their actions, stood in place in surprise, and turned their heads to search around. Some pirates wanted to run away as soon as they slipped their feet, but as soon as they moved, they felt the hair on their bodies stand on end, and their hearts pounded as if they wanted to jump out of their chests. Whoever moves will die. They had to stop and lie down honestly, praying that this person would not remember them. The 8 people who besieged Yang Zhao were sweating profusely, secretly glancing at the great monk above their heads, and some of them wanted to retreat. But it's okay to have this thought, but not to put it into action. As long as they want to retreat, they have a premonition that they will be crushed into powder. After a while, these pirates also understood. The great monk above won't let them go. These people cursed their ancestors in their hearts, and their hands were inevitably affected. As soon as they were wild gods, Yang Zhao seized the opportunity and stabbed one to death. As soon as one of them died, a new pirate suddenly appeared next to Yang Zhao. The pirate was still blinded when he came over unexpectedly, and Yang Zhao's magic hit him hard without paying attention, and his hair was instantly burned. Everyone understood at this moment, and the pirates felt their blood rushing into their hearts. They were all in the business of licking blood on the edge of a knife, and they knew better than anyone when to fight for their lives. If we kill her, we may still survive, otherwise we will have to let her kill us. Brothers, kill her to survive. Damn it, I will drag her down with me even if I die. For a moment, Yang Zhao was in danger again. This change made the little beam people under the story jump up and down in anger. You want to sharpen the knife, but does the knife agree? It's not your family, so you don't feel sorry for it. But even if you are so angry that your mouth is shaking, you have to say nice things. Older mortal, Yang Zhao is still young. There is plenty of time to hone her skills. There is no need to rush. Please save her. Whoever can lend a hand, we will give 20,000 taels of silver. But this time, no matter how the little bean man shouted, the one on the throne remained indifferent, and the other cultivators were even more silent. The entire island fell into a strange silence, except for Yang Zhao and the other 9. All the cultivators and sea creatures were watching this battle openly or secretly. They wanted to see whether the grindstone would break first or the knife would sharpen first. Facts have proved that Yang Zhao has a kind of resilience. Even in an absolutely unfavorable battle situation, even if she has been possessed by a demon, she can still see a glimpse of a way out in the cracks. Or, it is precisely because she has been possessed by a demon that she is not afraid of life and death or pain. At the beginning, every time Yang Zhao was injured, her whole body would be physiologically stiff, and each stiffness would give the pirates more opportunities to attack, causing her to suffer more injuries. But it didn't take long for Yang Zhao's physiological instinctive reaction to disappear. Yang Zhao seemed to have adapted to the pain in this very short time, and restrained his instincts. The dragon spears originally scattered, moves gradually became systematic, and no longer neglected one thing, while focusing on another. The various small spells that Yang Zhao was familiar with became more and more skillful, and he seemed to be able to stabilize the chassis in the group attack. Chapter 407, Sharpening the Knife. In the strange and oppressive silence, Yang Zhao's side became a fuel for the battle. As long as Yang Zhao had a tendency to gain the upper hand and sat on the throne, the one who was sitting on the throne would randomly pass a pirate to her. There were also pirates who didn't believe in evil, and seeing that they couldn't beat Yang Zhao, they wanted to escape in order to survive. However, this pirate didn't run a few steps before his body was shattered into a pile of meat paste and fell to the ground from midair with a bang. The blood and meat paste drenched the surrounding flowers and plants with blood, attracting all kinds of unintelligent insects and animals to suck and lick. All the pirates who put the escape into action got the same result. This further stimulated the ferocity of these pirates. Yang Zhao was like the tofu that was slowly stewed on a low fire, always gurgling and not extinguishing the fire. But time is the most sharp blade that wears people down. In the long melee, Yang Zhao inevitably had some stamina. The moves of the Jayana long spear were somewhat deformed, the accuracy of the spell was also crooked, and the body movements were always a bit slower when trying to hide. To be honest, Xiaodaran was very surprised that Yang Zhao could fight for 2 hours. After all, fighting is a very strenuous sport. Look at those basketball stars and football stars. Which one can run the whole field for more than an hour without stopping? They are divided into small periods of time, with breaks in between, and they can replace people when they are very tired. But Yang Zhao has been fighting for almost 2 hours now. Who can replace Yang Zhao on Black Pearl Island? Even if Yang Zhao has practiced Taoism, she is not a fairy, and she is not a machine that burns oil. The foundation building period is not out of the category of human beings. What's more, Kuafu died of exhaustion, so what is Yang Zhao? No one on the island felt sorry for Yang Zhao, but the little beam people below felt very sorry for him. They were shouting below when Yang Zhao was not in any trouble. Older mortal, save her life. If Yang Zhao is not allowed to take a breath for such a long time, she will be exhausted to death if she is not killed. Older mortal, please have mercy on her and let Yang Zhao stop to drink some water and take a breath. You have to test the blade when sharpening the knife. You can't keep sharpening it. Let Yang Zhao drink some water. The emperor doesn't lack hungry soldiers. Sharpening a knife is a delicate job. It can't be done in one night. This time, it was not the 2 political commissars Xiaodong people who shouted, but all the Xiaodao people in Zhentao town who were shouting. They shouted in a flurry, and their main purpose was to let Yang Zhao come down and take a rest. As the saying goes, whoever's child is the one who loves him, the one who loves him will love him. There are so many people on the island, and they are silent for fear of offending this great monk. Only the Xiaodao people shouted, as if they didn't see the threat. There are actually risks in this. Xiaodao people are still experimental products. Now we only know that the foundation building cultivators can't harm the spiritual consciousness stationed in the Xiaodao people, but cultivators above the foundation building stage have not been tested. Moreover, in the world of cultivation, there are many strange and numerous magics, and there are countless races. This great cultivator can suppress the entire Black Pearl Island with just his eyes and a few words. Who can guarantee that he will not cause harm to the spiritual consciousness of the Little Bean Man? The Little Bean Man knows the risks, but the Little Bean Man is unwilling to shut his mouth. The great cultivator on the throne still has no expression on his face, and he turns a deaf ear to the Little Bean Man's shouting. When Yang Zhao was in danger and panting, the great cultivator took action. It's been so long, and I haven't broken through the inner demon yet, alas. He just waved his hand, and a golden incense was wrapped around his index finger. He flicked it lightly. This incense fell directly on the top of Yang Zhao's head. Then, the incense suddenly burst, and a huge spiritual power poured directly from Yang Zhao's sky gate into her meridians. Use incense to replace spiritual power. Yang Zhao has also learned this trick, but it is definitely not as good as this great cultivator. Yang Zhao used at most a trace of incense that was invisible to the naked eye. It took more than an hour of practice to exchange the spiritual power, which greatly increased her practice speed. The method of this great monk instantly filled Yang Zhao's meridians, which had been gradually drying up. Although Yang Zhao was still very tired physically, the sufficient spiritual power replenished her physical strength and allowed her to stabilize the situation again. At this time, the pirates were really dumbfounded. They were going to kill this man in a round-robin battle, but this man actually opened a cheat. Who could stand this? At that moment, two people wanted to slip away, and then they turned into a pile of rotten meat and fell to the ground. The two sides fell into a cruel stalemate. When the pirate died, the Great Monk used other pirates to fill in. When Yang Zhao was exhausted, the Great Monk used incense to exchange her spiritual power. Both sides had a cheat, but one was a human cheat and the other was an incense cheat. The fight lasted until the sky turned white. Several large ships had already arrived outside the Black Pearl Island. The largest of them were flying military flags. Soldiers stood in awe. All their weapons were aimed at the Black Pearl Island. Several high-ranking officers stood at the bow with their hands behind their backs, facing the sea breeze, quietly looking at the Black Pearl Island. The entire fleet was silent and solemn. Several other flying boats were parked steadily under the clouds. These 5 flying boats arrived much earlier than those military ships. They were flying boats of the Stepping Yin Tower, and they were filled with a lot of cultivators. Each flying boat was intended to be manned by a giant unstage cultivator. This side was more lively. 5 giant unstage cultivators gathered together and flew in the air, pointing at the Black Pearl Island. A giant unstage sea creature touched a fleshy whisker on his lips. Did we come here in vain? Do you think you can give us silver? A human giant unstage cultivator in a red coat next to him hesitated. You have to give us money, right? We got up in the middle of the night after receiving the news and started to support them without even putting on our clothes. You should at least give us some hard work fees and lost wages, right? But we didn't do anything. We are just flying here without working. What if they regret it? The Sea Clan member was a little uncertain. After all, the Sea Clan respected the strong, and they often encountered people trying to snatch their territory. It is normal for the Sea Clan not to give you money when someone's cultivation is several levels higher than yours. A young female giant of the human race next to her was anxious. She had just entered the giant stage and was in urgent need of money. Why should you regret it? We don't need money to mobilize manpower. Our flying boat doesn't need money to operate. Besides, when has our Tain Tower ever suffered a loss? The Sea Clan member who stroked his real meat beard was still a little pessimistic. It's impossible not to suffer a loss. Look how scary the guy on the island is. We didn't do anything. We just floated here. It's understandable that he didn't give us money. After all, we didn't help much. We adults should give him some face. An old man in the giant stage standing in the middle smiled and tried to smooth things over. Not really, not really. A small island worth a few thousand taels of silver is not worth the attention of the Great Monk. Hey, I don't know when the matter will be over. I want to take the silver back and have a good drink. At this time, a small fleet was slowly approaching in the distance. The largest ship at the head was flying the flag of the Great Zhao dynasty. There were 5 or 6 ships gathered together. Not long after they arrived, they discovered the abnormality here. At that time, a small team of soldiers in the uniforms of the Great Zhao dynasty flew out of the ship. They circled the nearby sea for a short time, and then went directly to the large warships. They were far away, so they took out their badges and began to introduce themselves. Under the rule of Lord Shan Yuanying, the foreign goods purchasing envoy of the Great Zhao dynasty, Lin Fengai, who pays respect to the Lord. Someone from the large warships also came out to check the waist badges, and after confirming that they were correct, they led the people into the ship. I don't know how the two sides communicated, but in a few minutes, this small group of people flew back to their small fleet, and then the small fleet of 5 or 6 ships slowly sailed to the back of the large warships. Then the people in the boats began to gather on the deck, looking at the direction of Black Pearl Island with great interest. It looked lively. In addition to having better eyesight, the cultivators also have various spells and magic tools that can improve their eyesight. These things make watching the excitement particularly simple. The fleet on the military side was relatively well behaved. The young cultivators in several flying boats in the Stepping Yin Tower had already started to open the market and bet on silver. Because of their semi-official status, they are more courageous, unlike those pirates who are honest. At this time, hundreds of people gathered inside and outside the Black Pig Island to watch the excitement. If we count the sea creatures in Shanghai, there are countless of them. Yang Zhao was not feeling well either. After several times of exhaustion, her originally manic mind regained a trace of rationality. Who am I? The brain seemed to start working hard and slowly under this question. I am Yang Zhao. Am I really Yang Zhao? What am I doing? Killing people. Killing is against the law. Who are they? Killing is against the law. It's against the law. Police. I don't want to go to jail. Yang Zhao seemed to be splashed with a basin of cold water. Suddenly she woke up from a dream. A strange smile froze on her face, and fear slowly seeped out of her eyes. I killed someone. I killed someone. I killed someone. Yang Zhao felt her hands and feet go weak, and her heart trembled unconsciously. At the moment when Yang Zhao woke up, the pirates surrounding her disappeared in the blink of an eye. The great monk on the throne opened his lips slightly. Okay, the knives are sharpened. You can go. The pirates, who were originally as quiet as chickens, scattered like birds and beasts, and rushed into the sea like an arrow from a bow, and disappeared in a few flashes. Only the pirates in the giant on stage respectfully saluted the great monk, and then dared to leave. When your life is in the hands of others, it is best to be polite and humble. As soon as the pirates left, the generals on the warships also flew into the air, respectfully saluted the unknown great monk, and then led the ships away. When the giant on stage monks hired by Yang Zhao wanted to pay their respects in person, the great monk had disappeared. The morning glow of the morning sun dyed the clouds red, and various seabirds began to sing in the sky. The turbulent sea water gradually calmed down. Yang Zhao sat down on the ground powerlessly, his head filled with the fact that he had killed someone, and then he began to vomit endlessly. Among those killed by Yang Zhao on the ground, some were sea creatures, and one had wings. But Yang Zhao had lived here for a year, and understood that sea creatures were the same as humans, with the same intelligence, and killing them was the same as killing people. For a modern young man who has been abiding by the law for more than 20 years, killing is something he only thinks about in his mind when reading novels. Who really dares to pick up a knife to kill people? Besides, Yang Zhao is a college student with a bright future. Who would be so desperate to kill people? Besides, killing is not a good job, especially for Yang Zhao, who has lived in a society ruled by law since childhood. This incident not only squeezed Yang Zhao's stomach, but also kept cutting her nerves. How could I kill people? This is different from what she saw in the nightmare. In the dream, she knew that she was dreaming, and she knew that those people were not killed by her, and she didn't have such a heavy burden in her heart. But it's different now. Now these people were killed by her own hands, and it was her first time to kill someone. Although he knew that he might kill people after practicing Taoism, he didn't expect that. Even if he had prepared himself mentally, when this happened to her, she still felt as uncomfortable as if being stabbed by a knife. A group of little bean people nearby had gathered. Seeing Yang Zhao's reaction, some patted his back and some looked for water. One little bean person even hugged her gently and comforted her softly. It's okay, Comrade Yang, these people are pirates, you are righteous. Comrade Yang, haven't you heard of that song? When friends come, there are good wine. When jackals come, there are hunting rifles. Those pirates are no different from jackals. You are not wrong. If you don't resist, they will kill you. But I killed someone. Yang Zhao held back vomiting. Tears flowed out uncontrollably. Shang Jia also came to Yang Zhao's side. What's wrong with killing people? For cultivators, in addition to fighting with the sky and the earth, they also have to fight with people. I also wonder why you became possessed. At the beginning, your spiritual wisdom was very clear. This question is not something that Yang Zhao, who is now in a state of confusion, can answer. Shang Jia didn't dwell on it and directly lifted Yang Zhao up with her spiritual power. Yang Zhao was now covered in wounds, and Shang Jia didn't dare to move for fear of worsening the injuries. You are covered in wounds now. If you don't treat it properly, you will suffer. Shang Jia summoned a small water ball and sent it to Yang Zhao's mouth. Now the whole island is in a mess because of the pirates. The little bean man who went out to find water is like a meat bun hitting a dog. Once he goes, he can't turn back. Hurry up and drink some water to calm down. Do you see those ships? The foreign goods purchasing envoys from the court are here. Yang Zhao was in a daze and saw several sea ships in the distance and flying boats in the sky. She subconsciously wanted to stand up, but before she could make any move, the pain all over her body suppressed her again. Mu Fangaiu, a giant and cultivator from the outside world, also came to Yang Zhao's side. You are injured. The most important thing now is to heal your wounds. You can tell the people below to do the things on the island. Chapter 408. The sun was rising, illuminating everything, and the entire Black Pearl Island was in a mess. Yang Zhao was sent to the formation control center where he used to live and was taken care of by the Little Bean people. Shang Jia went to Yunshan City to ask for a doctor for her. Yang Zhao watched the Little Bean people write the contract and endured the pain all over his body and sent the contract back with the Taoist tablet. Then he slept for an hour and then held a large box containing the traction beans and pulled everyone's consciousness to the traction beans in the clan Soul Land. Then he lay down and didn't care about anything. The traction beans were carried out by the Little Bean people and handed to the supervisor Zhang, who was waiting outside. Now the island is short of people, and after the pirate attack that night, there are only a few hundred Little Bean people left. In order to increase the labor force, Yang Zhao didn't care about his injuries and prepared the traction beans first. The Little Bean people just carried the box out, and Shang Jia had already invited the doctor from Yunshan City. This is a middle-aged woman with grey hair, wearing light-colored clothes, clean and tidy, with her hair combed meticulously, and her nails cut short. This person's surname is Qi, and she is respectfully called Dr. Qi. She has 2 assistants behind her. She frowned when she saw Yang Zhao, took out the magic weapon from her arms, and carefully examined Yang Zhao from head to toe. Not to mention the knife and axe wounds all over his body. There are countless burns and frostbite, several broken ribs, 1 leg fractured, and a large piece of flesh was cut off the other leg. Both arms have fractures, and the 2 thumbs that were used for guns are also broken. There are 2 transparent holes on the chest and stomach. The most important thing is that Yang Zhao's spine has been severely traumatized. When the Xiaodao people saw the injury, they were terrified and gave her emergency hemostasis. A normal person with such injuries would either be in the IQ or in the King of Hell's palace, who would still fight outside. Yang Zhao's injuries gave them a more intuitive understanding of the cultivators. This physique makes people dare not classify Yang Zhao as a human. But for Dr. Qi, these are all skin injuries, which are nothing. Yang Zhao is now most troubled by 2 aspects. One is the inner demon, and the other is the tendons. The inner demon is not something that doctors can cure, so she put it aside for the time being. As for Yang Zhao's meridians, she carefully checked them several times and asked the patient's family. Finally, she came to a conclusion. This meridian is supported by spiritual power. There are many patients now. The small meridians have been broken by spiritual power. It's a mess inside, and the larger meridians can't stand it and have cracked. He shook his head while looking at her. If this meridian is not cleaned up, the patient can't think about practicing in the future. Now the whole room is Xiaodao people except Shang Jia, but Shang Jia is an outsider. She can help to invite a doctor, but she can't speak. Only Xiaodao people can speak in this room. Just treat it. If you need money, we will give it to you. If you need things, we have plenty of money. Just treat it. As long as you treat it well, we will definitely reward you handsomely. Dr. Qi still shook his head. It's difficult. Some things can't be bought, even if you have money. You need connections. Especially the things that repair meridians, which are even more rare. It's not something that a small doctor like me can buy. What should I do? I have money, but I haven't spent it yet. You tell us what you need, and we will find connections to buy it. Even though the Little Bean man answered very straightforwardly, Dr. Qi still shook his head. Because no matter what the Little Bean man said, they were not Yang Zhao's family members. There were no family members of hers in the entire Black Bamboo Island. In the eyes of her consciousness, the Little Bean man was a stranger to Yang Zhao, at most a friend, and they talked a lot, but who knew whether a Little Bean man had money? The activity of using the Yang beans itself had no credibility in the cultivation world, because everyone didn't know whether the Yang beans were hidden in people or ghosts, demons, or monsters. Besides, can a friend really devote himself to the patient and give money? This question is a question mark. So she said so much, not for the little bean man, she said it for Yang Zhao who was lying below. To make an inappropriate analogy, this is like a doctor who is about to perform an operation. There are no relatives around, and the patient is asked to sign by himself. I'll go back and ask the leader to find a way. A little bean man suddenly became shorter and turned into a small bean and was picked up by the little bean man next to him. Yang Zhao's thoughts were a little confused. Seeing people coming in and out of the room, she was annoyed and had a headache. But her body hurt too much, especially she was covered with injuries. Whether she was lying or lying down, it was uncomfortable. Can you treat my external injuries first? It hurts too much, I can't sleep. Her voice was soft, but everyone in the room had sharp ears and eyes, so they naturally heard it. When Dr. Qi saw Yang Zhao say this, he called the two helpers behind him, took medicine and magic tools, and began to treat Yang Zhao's external injuries. Everyone in the room was also driven out by Dr. Qi. To treat the injury, Yang Zhao must take off all his clothes first. It would be immoral for others to watch. The little bean people could only worry outside. Dr. Qi lit another stick of incense in the room and waited for the shampoo to slowly diffuse into the entire space. Smelling this unfamiliar fragrance, Yang Zhao, who was originally distracted, finally gathered a little spirit. Doctor, do you have anything to say to me? What I said just now is actually still reserved. After all, there are no relatives of yours here. I asked and it seems that they are all hired. Dr. Qi looked at Yang Zhao with some worry. Your injury is so serious that I can't treat it alone. You need not only things, but also people now. Yang Zhao's brain was not working well at this time. He thought for a minute before he understood what it meant. Dr. Qi meant that Yang Zhao was alone here as an island owner, young, and had no relatives around him. The only friends he had were a group of little bean people. She was afraid that if the people on the island knew that Yang Zhao's injury was too serious and difficult to treat, there would be some commotion among the people below. After all, Dr. Qi's clinic was opened in Yunshan City. The legal system in this overseas place has never been as sound as that in the inland of the Great Zhao. There are even pirates, not to mention the internal strife and seizure of power. Once such a thing happens, it is hard to say whether Yang Zhao will be thin or not, but the doctor's medical fee will definitely be lost. Yang Zhao forced a faint smile on his pale face. It's okay. My senior just left this morning. Now everyone on the island is very honest. Otherwise, how could Yang Zhao, who has no relatives and friends to rely on, be able to treat her injuries here safely? You know, she is so seriously injured now. These people on the island can kill her and rob the assets in the Kayankan bag. After all, Yang Zhao is in an absolute disadvantage now. Everyone on the island knows that she is rich, and everyone on the island also knows that her cultivation is not high. The reason why no one took advantage of the fire to rob is because the great monk Yang Zhao invited was too scary. Okay, you have a plan in mind. Then Dr. Qi told her in detail about the meridian problem in Yang Zhao's body. You have to be mentally prepared. Your tendons are too badly injured now. Many small meridians are difficult to repair. Yang Zhao couldn't help but frown. Will it affect your cultivation? Of course. The meridians in the human body are like the nutrient channels in a big tree. If there is a blockage in one side, the branches and leaves on that side will naturally wither. Dr. Qi spoke slowly and kindly, trying to ease Yang Zhao's nervousness with a kind tone. She was afraid that Yang Zhao would be upset and get emotional and refuse to cooperate with the treatment. What doctors hate most is that patients don't cooperate with treatment. But even if they hate it, in the absence of family members, the basic condition should be explained to the patient clearly. I'm not very knowledgeable. I can only help you treat your external injuries. If there are specific medicines to help your meridians, I can only restore you to a state of recovery. Yang Zhao had a blank expression and a calm heart when he listened, as if the injury was not his own. The incense that Dr. Qi lit, in addition to helping Yang Zhao focus his mind, definitely also had a calming effect. Otherwise, which cultivator would remain indifferent to such bad news? Why did Fang Shili go crazy? It was because he couldn't practice, no matter how hard he practiced. If I come to treat you, you will definitely be able to practice, but it is impossible to say that there is no impact at all, so I recommend that your family find a better doctor to help you." How can Yang Zhao invite a good doctor? She is still lying in bed and unable to move. Now Yang Zhao has only two ways. One is to ask Shen Sishan for help from Guofeng and Qiang. But asking Shen Sishan for help will cost a lot of money. And if he keeps asking him for the initiative of the transaction, the other party will slowly take it. Things will be difficult to deal with in the future. The other is Zhuan Rutao. Compared with Shen Sishan, Yang Zhao is more inclined to use silver to offer a reward in Zhuan Rutao. Dr. Qi, do you have any recommendations? Dr. Qi thought silently for a while. I only know that there is a senior named Luan Chuangshan who is the best at treating meridians. He is known as a master in this field, but I don't have any way to invite this doctor. There is also a senior named Feng Yaozhe from Ligan Valley. He is a foreign monk who stays in Ligan Valley all year round. It is said that he is also a good hand at treating meridians. Yang Zhao didn't know any of them, and it was a bit difficult to invite them just by hearing the name. I don't know if I can use silver to break open their door. Yang Zhao closed his eyes slightly. Then please tell me the herbs you need, and I will see if I can find them together. Dr. Qi asked Xiaodaran to bring paper and pen outside, and started to write the missing medicine list. You have to act quickly. Whether it is an external injury or an internal injury, the sooner you treat it, the faster it will heal. The longer you delay, the more stubborn it will become. Yang Zhao glanced at the medicine list. Hey, I don't know the herbs in it, and I don't even know many words. Facing this medicine list, she became half illiterate. Alas. Yang Zhao sighed, and took out 5 bills of exchange for 200 taels of silver from his bosom. Dr. Qi, you have worked hard too. This money will be used as medical expenses for diagnosis and treatment first. If it is not enough, please tell me later. Dr. Qi saw so much silver and wanted to give it back to Yang Zhao. 5 local bills of exchange in Yunshan City are 1000 taels of silver. She is not a great doctor. Although she is well known in Yunshan City, it is already a lot for her to charge more than 10 taels of silver for treating illnesses. Even for the difficult and complicated diseases of cultivators, people would only give him a consultation fee of 200 or 300 taels of silver at most. In comparison, Yang Zhao is unique in this regard. It is so generous that Dr. Qi feels that the silver is a bit expensive. I don't need so much now. After all, the medicines in my hand are for treating skin injuries. Now it is obvious that her disease can only be cured halfway, and her medical skills cannot afford so much silver, so the silver is burned. Take it first. You can see that people on the whole island are busy now. I will pay you the silver first. After that, I will forget about it. The key is that no one on Black Pearl Island will help Yang Zhao pay the silver. Yang Zhao was afraid that the incense would extinguish her later, and she felt dazed again. Dr. Qi would not treat her injuries well if he couldn't get the silver. Perhaps because patients are very sensitive, Yang Zhao felt a sour feeling in her nose. If there was no incense from Dr. Qi, she would cry out of grievance. Dr. Qi obviously thought of the current situation on the island. He sighed and stuffed the bill into his sleeve. Don't worry, I will return the extra silver to you. Yang Zhao smiled slightly and didn't care. What she cares about most now is her meridian problem. As for silver, she can fill the entire room with silver. She took out the messenger magic weapon from the Kyankan bag with trembling hands. Because the thumbs of both hands were broken, the messenger magic weapon has never been as heavy as it is today. Let me see who likes silver. Not long after, the huge bounty order exploded in Zhuan Rutao with a big splash. Xiangxing Gai, oh my goodness, 100,000 taels of silver, oh my god. Why didn't I go to study medicine? Kelele from Yang Zhao Prefecture, this is the largest bounty task since this year. Hu Yun from Huanggang Prefecture, this is not the largest bounty task since this year, but in the past 3 years. The last time such a large bounty task was issued by Guozhou Commercial Bank to clean up a collapsed ruins. 150,000 taels of silver. Xiangxing Gai, can a rookie in cultivation really come up with so much silver? Shanhu, I work hard for a month and only get a few taels of silver? I'm so jealous that my eyes are red. There are so many ladies in the world, why am I not one of them? Shanghai Yang Zhenren, I know the friend who issued the bounty. Rookie in cultivation, are you in trouble again? Why did you go overseas? So far away. Cultivation rookie, I was very grateful for the help of Shanghai Yang Zhenren last time, otherwise I would be in big trouble. // Cultivation rookie, this time I met pirates, and now I'm injured, and can't get out of bed, and my meridians are also in big trouble, so I offer a large reward. Cultivation rookie, Senior Shanghai Yang Zhenren, do you have any news about Senior Feng Yaozhe and Senior Luan Chuangsheng of Lijuan Valley? You know me, I will definitely reward you handsomely. Shanghai Yang Zhenren, I know you didn't expect you to be so rich. Chapter 409. In fact, the people in the entire Zhuanru Tower were gossiping. 100,000 taels of silver. In a world of cultivation where 2 taels of silver can allow a family of 6 to live decently for more than a month, this 100,000 taels of silver can drive countless people crazy. Many people in Zhuanru Tower left messages of disbelief, speculating whether Yang Zhao was deliberately attracting attention. Didn't Yang Zhao know about this? Yang Zhao knew, and she admitted that she was deliberately attracting attention. In fact, let alone 100,000 taels of silver, even if 10,000 taels of silver were placed in Zhuanru Tower to compete for doctors, it would cause a sensation. But Yang Zhao didn't just want a sensation, she wanted someone who could really treat her meridians. She wanted a capable person. In the world of cultivation, the title of a capable person often refers not only to the name, but also to his cultivation. The higher the cultivation, the longer he lives, and the better his medical skills will be. Just like the 2 doctors recommended to her by Dr. Qi, they were both in the nascent soul stage, and had created a great reputation in the world of cultivation 200 or 300 years ago. Medicine is an empirical science. Doctors' medical skills will be high, only if they see more, treat more and practice more. Why are doctors in the top 3 hospitals in many big cities so good? Because there are too many patients for them to practice. This is also the reason why it is difficult for doctors in small county towns to improve their medical skills. Can Yang Zhao easily meet such a great cultivator in the nascent soul stage? The reason why Yang Zhao was unwilling to find Shen Sishan was that he was afraid of owing too many favors. If he owed too many favors, he would automatically be a generation lower. What Yang Zhao wanted was to ask the best professional doctor to treat her as soon as possible, when her meridian injury was still new and easy to treat without worsening. She was a young man in her 20s. At the age of youth and glory, she stood on the road of cultivation with both feet. The road was within reach, and the future was promising. If she was blocked from her future path because of an injury, she would be very upset. In order not to be upset in the future, she had to spend money now. Moreover, as a foreigner in the cultivation world, could she invite someone just by knowing his name? How is it possible? You can't even meet them. You have money, but you have nowhere to spend it. Zhuanru Tower is the most important window for cultivation in Yang Zhao's hands, and she can speak out through this window. If she didn't have this, she could only ask Shen Sishan for help. Now Yang Zhao is particularly grateful to the Shanghai Yangzhuan people, because his word slightly proved that Yang Zhao had the possibility of taking out the money. After a stick of incense burned, Yang Zhao fell asleep directly. At this time, more than a dozen little beam people came running outside. These little beam people were sent from various towns by flying boats. Because Yang Zhao was seriously injured, he didn't have so much energy to distinguish the little beam people. She directly put these little beam people into a big box, and then let the little beam people take it, and take the flying boat, to distribute it to each town. How to distribute? Just let the supervisors in each sea field grab a handful at will. The advantage of doing this is efficiency, and the disadvantage is that people can't be distinguished. This pitted a group of newcomers. This group of people was Guo Fumin Qiang, and they were the doctors and nurses specially found for Yang Zhao. Guo Fumin Qiang urgently transferred them from the military medical general hospital when they heard that Yang Zhao was seriously injured. This group of people had 2 functions. One was to take care of Yang Zhao, and the other was to get in touch with the medical skills of the cultivation world. As for whether they could learn it or not, that was another matter. Anyway, the opportunity was given. When they opened their eyes, they saw all strange little dwarfs. The only big one who looked like a human spoke very fast, and they could not understand it. Fortunately, more than 90% of the Xiao Dao people were soldiers. After knowing their mission, many people were willing to put down their work and take the flying boat. That's why they hurriedly came here from various towns by flying boat. When they arrived here, the door of Yang Zhao's room was still closed. The remaining political commissar Xiao Dao people also had some doubts when they saw these dozen people. After all, they had been here since last night and had never gone back. They didn't know about Guo Fumin Qiang's behavior of sending doctors. After a few words, the political commissar Xiao Dao gave them a simple assignment. First of all, the house where Yang Zhao lived was relatively small and could not accommodate so many people. In the end, 2 nurses and a surgeon were sent in. As for the remaining people, the political commissar Xiao Dao took charge and sent them to various towns by flying boats. Since the pirates had withdrawn, the workers who had hidden in the inland of the island naturally came back. It was dark last night, and even though there had been drills, many workers and children were injured in the process of hiding. Some were scratched, some sprained their feet, and some were broken. There was also a seawater rain last night, and many children began to have a fever. The island is now in need of doctors. The chief steward of the island is now receiving the foreign goods purchasing envoy of the court. With the great monk sitting on the island, the chief stewards on the island are all very proud, and they are not weak in receiving the foreign goods purchasing envoy of the Shu North Korea. Because there is a great monk sitting on the island, even if the foreign affairs purchasing envoy of the court has some complaints about the fact that Yang Zhao, the island owner, did not come out to greet him in person, he also expressed understanding after Xiao Dao's narration. After all, they all witnessed the knife sharpening incident. Using several lives to sharpen a knife for a junior, even if they were pirates, was a very extravagant thing. On the other side, the Ten Tower also came in behind the court's foreign goods purchasing envoy. However, neither the supervisors nor the Little Beam people knew much about the Ten Tower. They could only tell the Little Beam people about Yang Zhao's situation again, and ask them if they could wait for a while. Seeing this, the people from the Ten Tower did not make things difficult for the Little Beam people. They left a list and went back. The list recorded in detail how many people came to the Ten Tower this time, what their cultivation level was, and the fees to be paid. As for whether Yang Zhao would default on his debt, it was something that their masters had to consider. As soon as the people from the Ten Tower left, the supervisors began to take the court people to inspect the goods. In fact, these more than 1,000 pieces of open vein leaves were not placed with Yang Zhao. Yang Zhao was not a fool. Her cultivation level was at the foundation building stage. Holding so many open vein leaves would be a way to her own death. She was also afraid that the pirates would come after her regardless. So all these open vein leaves were handed over to the giant and stage monks and sea creatures on the island. Now those open vein leaves were put back into the warehouse by these giant and stage monks, waiting for inspection. The inspection process was very slow, because this matter was not only about handing over money and goods, but also about determining the grade. The court's foreign affairs purchasing envoys were accompanied by special offerings, who were specifically used to determine the grade of these open vein leaves. The purchase price of different grades of open vein leaves was different. My mobile phone was broken, and I didn't make much money. Should I lose another mobile phone? Chapter 410. Damn. Black Pearl Island was still in chaos, but I didn't expect another guest to come. Tata, who was guarding the outer sea area, appeared and stopped a middle-aged man with a thin face wearing grey cloth. Tata saluted first. Senior, the Black Pearl Island is ahead. What's the matter with you? When the man saw the little girl with red lips and white teeth standing in front of him, he also bowed his head. I'm Shen Royu, the master of the owner of Black Pearl Island. Today I heard that she was seriously injured, so I came to check on her. Master? Tata was stunned when she heard this. She has been staying in the sea since she was hired. She is the kind of employee who does her own job, but never wants to have any communication with the boss. In this respect, all sea creatures are similar. Only Emolin was relatively honest, because his tentacles were chopped off, and he lacked a brain. Recently, Emolin has grown a few new tentacles. Although they are not fully grown, his IQ has returned a little. It was these new tentacles that allowed Emolyn to block a whole fleet of pirates. Emolyn's cultivation level is only one step away from the nascent soul stage, but the sea race is a race that relies heavily on their bodies, and waving their pincers and throwing their tentacles is always more convenient than those spells. Senior, please wait a moment, I'll ask the island owner. Although Tata didn't know Shenryu, she didn't dare to take charge of this matter, mainly because Shenryu looked unhappy, and she was afraid that, if she angered him, he would suffer. When facing seniors with much higher cultivation levels than themselves, cultivators with lower cultivation levels will always be very polite. Tata took out the messenger magic weapon and asked Shangjaya. Because Shangjaya was from the prefectural school, although she had just reached the golden core stage, she was vaguely the leader of all the human cultivators hired on the island. She was also the one who had the most contact with Yang Zhao. This morning, Tata saw Shangjaya go to ask a doctor for Yang Zhao. As for Yang Zhao, now was the time for him to heal his injuries, and he probably didn't have time to take care of her. Shangjaya had met Shenryu before, and had a deep impression of this senior. When Yang Zhao was injured, she thought Shenryu might come. Otherwise, why would Shangjaya, a giant unstage cultivator, go to Yunshan City to ask for a doctor for Yang Zhao? Couldn't he send a foundation building stage cultivator to ask for one? Wasn't it because he was afraid that this senior would be dissatisfied with him? After all, Shangjaya, a giant unstage cultivator, was intact, with only his clothes torn a little, but Yang Zhao, the boss, was lying in bed. Any elder who saw this situation would have to wonder if the subordinates were deliberately not working hard. But she didn't expect this person to come so soon. Upon hearing that he was coming, Shangjaya went straight out of the island to greet him. As soon as they met, they bowed and apologized. Hello, Senior Shen. It was because I didn't protect Yang Zhao well that Yang Zhao was so seriously injured. No matter whether she was responsible for Yang Zhao's injury or not, it was right to admit her fault first. Shenryu took over Shangjaya's words and asked about Yang Zhao's condition first. How is Yang Zhao now? Did you ask for a doctor? His words made Shangjaya's heart clench. She knew that this person didn't answer because he didn't say anything about this question and wanted him to understand it himself. I went to invite him myself. His surname is Qi. He is a giant unstage cultivator. He graduated from the same prefecture as me, but he is a dozen years older than me. He is my senior sister and is an expert in treating external injuries. Shenryu nodded slightly, then frowned and ran straight to Black Pearl Island, as fast as a meteor. Tata and Shangjaya looked at each other, and they both saw a bit of caution in each other's eyes. Shangjaya chased after him with all his strength. Tata also decided to be more honest for the next day or two. If he angered this person, he would get angry because of the boss's injury, and they would have nothing to say. Shenryu waited for Shangjaya for a while, because without Shangjaya's guidance, he didn't know where Yang Zhao was treating his injuries. At this time, Yang Zhao was still in a coma. Although he had been treating for a long time, it was not yet completely completed. In the first 2 hours, she treated not only the flesh and blood injuries, but also the remnants of the magic. For example, the poison used by the other party, the magic and the spiritual power remnants of the spells nailed into the flesh. These things need to be carefully identified, and then the corresponding spells, elixirs, magic tools, etc. are used to remove them bit by bit. Fortunately, there are not many such injuries, because most of the pirates are sea creatures, and the mainstream is to strengthen the body. But just identifying the injuries requires a doctor to have a large amount of knowledge, otherwise it is difficult to distinguish. The 2 assistants brought by Dr. Qi are also her half apprentices. When treating injuries, they will talk about the treatment methods. At this time, the doctors and nurses who came later stretched their heads and watched and listened carefully. If they were not afraid of the other party's disgust, they would like to find a straight pen to write it down. Of course, the best way is to record it. When Shenryu arrived, she waited outside for a while accompanied by Shangjaya, before she was able to go into the house to see Yang Zhao. At this time, Yang Zhao had been wrapped like a zangzi. During the whole treatment process, except for a while when Dr. Qi lit incense at the beginning, he was awake for most of the rest of the time. Even when treating the wound, The muscles trembled with pain, but he still didn't wake up. It is estimated that this is another effect of the incense led by Dr. Qi. Dr. Qi was also stunned when he saw Shen Ruoyu. Seeing Shang Jia next to him winking desperately, he also hurriedly bowed and greeted. Shen Ruoyu stretched out his hand and waved it directly. Dr. Qi, there is no need to be polite. Can you tell me in detail about Yang Zhao's injury? Dr. Qi's eyes slipped to Shang Jia again. Seeing her nod affirmatively, Dr. Qi no longer hesitated and directly told Yang Zhao's injury carefully again. He also explained his medication and treatment methods in detail, and finally talked about the meridians. As soon as Dr. Qi finished speaking, Shen Ruoyu's eyes turned to Shang Jia. Shang Jia didn't even need Shen Ruoyu to speak, and she told him everything about how Yang Zhao was possessed by a demon, how he invited a great monk to sit in, and how he was sharpened by the great monk. Of course, she also secretly took herself out. She couldn't let Shen Ruoyu, the great monk, misunderstand her and remember her grudge. Even if he remembered it for one more second, it would be irresponsible for her life. When she said this, Shen Ruoyu instantly knew what was going on. First of all, there is the problem of Yang Zhao's possession. Yang Zhao has been haunted by nightmares for a long time because of her eye problems. In her nightmares, she not only kills people on the battlefield, but also sees the miserable scene of corpses under her eyes. These things haunt her every night, and Yang Zhao has no way to hide or avoid them. If it weren't for her strong character and high endurance, and the fact that the country is rich and the people are strong, and sent a psychologist and a political commissar to help Yang Zhao with her psychological problems, someone else would have collapsed and become possessed. Many veterans lose control of their emotions after going to the battlefield. This is not only a modern problem, but also very common in ancient times. For Shen Ruoyu, he grew up when the Ming dynasty had just been established, and it was a time of frequent wars. At that time, in order to prevent the soldiers from breaking the camp due to psychological problems, the generals who led the troops at that time often gave them some ways to vent their anger before or after the battle. For example, massacres, rape, regardless of men and women, robbery, and giving them wine to let them gamble. In short, they had to let them release the evil spirit they had just uttered. But at that time, how long did a battle last? If it was a siege, it might last longer. If it was a battle in the field, more time would be spent on marching, and the battle would only take 1 or 2 hours to decide the winner. As for Yang Zhao, she didn't even have a comrade in arms. After struggling in this bloody nightmare for so long, her sanity had long been shaky. That's why she became possessed after killing the first person in her life. It should be said that the string in Yang Zhao's head was already very tight, and it would break with just a little bit of power. This little bit of power could be a short period of time, or it could be some other external force. As long as the problem of the eyes was not solved, Yang Zhao's possession was inevitable. And the great monk that Yang Zhao invited out of the Sujin pagoda chose the simplest way for her to face Yang Zhao's possession. Kill people. As long as she killed enough people, killed too many people, killed until she was numb, and spit out the madness in her heart, she would naturally come out of the possession. This is the same as the ancient generals letting their soldiers slaughter the city. Of course, if he couldn't get out, it would be Yang Zhao's bad luck. However, the great monk of the Sujin clan might have too high a cultivation level, and his understanding of the weakness of the foundation building monks might be a little bit biased. It might also be that he didn't care whether Yang Zhao's path was blocked or not. When Yang Zhao was exhausted, he used incense to exchange for spiritual power to help her, and he was a little heavy-handed. Just this little deviation of the great monk's carelessness caused the consequences of Yang Zhao's meridians being burst and even eroded. Looking at Yang Zhao, who was still sleeping, Shen Ruoyu secretly thought that this was really not his own child, and he didn't know how to feel sorry for him. If he met that person, he would have to fight with him. If he could beat him, and he would have to scold him. If he couldn't beat him, to relieve the bad temper in his heart. He reached out and gently touched Yang Zhao's eyebrows, and now his brows were frowned even tighter. Why didn't you use the few thunder methods I left for you? Alas. Although he said so, Shen Ruoyu also knew that Yang Zhao was possessed by the devil too quickly, and he didn't have time to use these thunder methods. Of course, it didn't help. Apart from killing a few more pirates, he was still possessed. Dr. Qi, do you have any plan for Yang Zhao's meridian problem? Dr. Qi shook his head awkwardly. Yang Zhao's meridians are too badly injured. I'm a young monk who has just studied medicine for more than 10 years. I'm not sure that I can restore her to her original state. Seeing that Shenruo's face was getting more and more gloomy, Dr. Qi hurriedly told what he saw. But Senior Shen, don't worry too much. Before you came, Yang Zhao had already posted a request for help for 100,000 taels of silver in Zuanru Tower. I believe you will get a reply soon. As soon as the 100,000 taels of silver came out, Shang Jia's eyes were straight, silently looking at Yang Zhao who was lying on the bed and knew nothing. His eyes were fiery. That was 100,000 taels of silver, a weight that could really kill people. According to Shang Jia's current salary level, how many years would it take for her to save up without eating or drinking? No, it should be said that as long as Shang Jia did not enter the nascent soul stage, she would never be able to save up that much silver. Because she has a very expensive hobby, alchemy. Besides, she has no talent for alchemy. This hobby destined Shang Jia to be a god of wealth forever. Because Yang Zhao fell asleep, the political commissar Xiaodaran who was guarding outside the room began to arrange a room for Shenroi to rest. Fortunately, although there were not many houses built in the formation control room at the beginning, after the pirates left, many formation masters went to various sea fields to check the degree of damage of the formation, which vacated a lot of rooms. Shenroi and Dr. Qi can now live completely. Of course, this room is not occupied for nothing, but after standing, as Xiaodaran went to find the formation master whose room was occupied to explain the situation, and then said that he would give silver. Of course, this silver is just what Xiaodaran said. Those formation masters didn't even ask for a tael of silver, and said that it was his blessing to have the room occupied. After all, whether it is Shenroi or Dr. Qi, their cultivation is much higher than these formation masters. Yang Zhao didn't wake up until noon the next day. As soon as he woke up, he felt a bitter mouth, thirsty as if on fire, and his body was painful, itchy, and stuffy. Water, water. Here, Zhao Zhang, go call Dr. Qi. The little bean doctor who was guarding Yang Zhao was surprised. Are you awake? Do you know who you are? Do you want to vomit? Does your heart feel good? If this were in the hospital, there would be professional instruments and many questions would not need to be asked. But there is nothing on Black Pearl Island, and the little bean man can only ask the doctor with his mouth. Now Yang Zhao felt his head buzzing. Although he knew that the other party was speaking Chinese, she could not understand it at all, so she could only continue to whisper, water, water. Yang Zhao, bear it for a while, and wait for Dr. Qi to come. I will ask him if he can give you some water. Although this little bean man is also a doctor, he cannot give Yang Zhao medical advice casually now. The first to come in was Shenroi. He has a high level of cultivation, moves quickly, and is close, so he is naturally the first to enter the door. Dr. Qi followed in a few seconds later. The little bean man came up to him and spoke in a halting foreign language. The patient wants to drink water. Shall we give it to her? This sentence only had a few words, and he made a few mistakes. In addition, his accent was very strange, so Dr. Qi didn't understand it at first. She didn't even understand what Yang Zhao said, because Yang Zhao, who was unconscious, was speaking Chinese. It was Shenroi who was next to him who helped translate it. Can Yang Zhao drink water now? Let me check it out. Dr. Qi quickly took out his handy medical instrument from his arms and began to check Yang Zhao's condition with it. Dr. Xiaodaran looked at the instrument he took out, his eyes shining. In less than 10 seconds, Dr. Qi had finished the examination. Except for the meridian problem, she is recovering well now, and you can give her water. Hearing this, Shenroi waved one hand, and a small water ball appeared at the corner of Yang Zhao's mouth. Yang Zhao felt the breath of water at the corner of his mouth, and began to swallow it in big gulps. As the water entered her mouth, and moistened her dry esophagus, Yang Zhao slowly became more awake. Master. She was stunned when she opened her eyes. Ah, I dreamed of a ghost. Chapter 411, Handover. Listening to Yang Zhao's mumbling, everyone in the room suddenly fell silent. Although everyone knew that Yang Zhao was not awake, yet and was talking nonsense. But who has ever seen his master say that he dreamed of ghosts? How can he compare his master to a ghost? This kind of thing is a bit unfair even to think about it in his heart. Not to mention the foreign monks who value the inheritance of master and apprentice. Even the students of the prefecture school dare not be so presumptuous in front of the prefecture school teachers. It should be said that in the world of cultivation, the strength gap between monks is too large. Since ancient times, low-level monks basically dare not even have sexual fantasies when facing great shyness, and they dare not let go of their eyes when standing opposite each other. They are afraid that some words or surmise will annoy others, and others will stretch out a finger to crush themselves to death. For the sake of their own lives, low-level monks are very polite to high-level monks, even in their dreams. But Shenryu didn't care about these. He smiled freely. Okay, she can still talk, and she looks in good spirits. Dr. Key, please check her carefully to see if you need to change the medicine. I'll come in and check on her later. After saying that, he turned and left the room. After all, Yang Zhao is a woman. Even though Shenryu is older and more senior, and they are different from ghosts, it is a rule in his bones that men and women should not be intimate with each other. As soon as Shenryu left, Dr. Qi began to re-examine and change the medicine for Yang Zhao, and then ordered the little bean man to bring in the medicine that had been boiled long ago and poured it into Yang Zhao's mouth. The medicine was so bitter that Yang Zhao's tongue was numb, but the bitterness also made Yang Zhao sober and come over. After she drank it, a handful of pills were stuffed into her mouth. Dr. Qi directed people to work while asking, "Do you know who you are? How do you feel now?" "I'm Yang Zhao, Dr. Qi, I'm really troubling you." The little bean doctor next to him breathed a sigh of relief when he heard this. After such a serious injury is operated on in the hospital, the anesthesiologist must accompany the patient throughout the whole process, and the patient should wake up within half an hour after the anesthesia is stopped. However, Yang Zhao has been in a coma since he came here yesterday. No matter how he is called, he will not wake up. This has to make the little bean doctor with rich clinical experience feel scared. But now it seems that the treatment process is completely different in two different worlds. Yang Zhao has recovered well. No one in this room is paying attention to how the little bean is doing. The conversation between the strange doctor and Yang Zhao has not stopped. "How do you feel now?" Yang Zhao smacked his lips. "My whole body hurts, itches, and feels stuffy, and my head is a little buzzing. I was fine just now, but after taking a bowl of medicine, I'm so hungry that I can eat people." She has had sequelae since she built her foundation. She can't stand hunger. When she is hungry, she is scratching her heart and lungs. Knowing that you are hungry is a good thing. I will ask someone to send you more meat and sugar later. It is best to buy some spiritual meat. It is the most nourishing for patients like you. Shangjia, who was standing outside with Shenryu, looked at Shenryu. "There is no spiritual flesh on Black Pearl Island. Senior, please allow me to be presumptuous. I will go to Yunshan City to buy one." "Go." Shenryu nodded. "Wait until Yang Zhao sobers up a little and ask her to pay you more silver." "What are you talking about? This is what I should do. What's the money?" Although Shenryu did not want to make meritorious contributions because of Yang Zhao, after listening to the description of the little bean man, as soon as Shangjia left, another human giant and cultivator Mufangai came to accompany Shenryu and also described the rainy night he saw. In fact, what he said was basically the same as Shangjia, but the perspective was a little different. Because Yang Zhao was a woman and was so seriously injured, it was not easy for Mufangai, a big man, to stay by her side. Whether before or after the injury, Yang Zhao walked closer to Shangjia. This also made him slow down when it came to Shenryu's visit to Black Pearl Island. Because Shangjia was from the prefectural school, he would always take a step back when facing Mufangai. This time, he came up because Shangjia left. Both of them were workers, so it was good that both sides were polite to each other. As the two were talking, the chief steward of Black Pearl Island came down from a small flying boat with a government clerk and 6 or 7 little bean people. When he saw Shenryu standing outside, his eyes lit up. Mu Fangaiu, the chief steward of the Chindan period cultivator, knew that the person who could make this Chindan period cultivator smile beside him must be the elder of Island Master Yang. He couldn't help but straighten his back a little more. This must be Master Shen. My surname is Chen, and I'm the supervisor under Island Master Yang. Supervisor Chen saluted, and the clerk from the government office who came with him also saluted. Looking at the dark and thin middle-aged man in front of him, Shenryu nodded slightly. What's the matter? It's like this. After a day and a half, all the cane leaves have been inspected. I took Lu Wenshu to find Island Master Yang to settle the accounts. Yang Zhao's mind is not very clear now. Shenryu pointed to the little beam people following Supervisor Chen. Please show me the account. Yes. Xiaodaran took out a piece of paper and handed it to Shenryu. Shenryu frowned and then quickly relaxed. It was written in simplified Chinese characters. Although Shenryu was a little uncomfortable, Chinese characters were easy to recognize for him. And because Yang Zhao gave him a mobile phone and let him take videos for fun, although he got a little bored after a few days, his favorite thing to do now was to lie on the ground and rest. So he is not unfamiliar with Arabic numerals now. This piece of paper records the quality and quantity of the veined leaves on the island and the quotation given by the government. Then the total price was calculated. The least number is the top quality veined leaves. Among more than 1,000 veined leaves, only 17 pieces are top quality and 65 pieces are top quality. Then there are excellent products, good products, and so on. Among them, the top quality is the most expensive. The purchase price of one piece can be sold to the court for more than 100 taels of silver. The purchase price of top quality is much lower, only 20 to 30 taels of silver. This kind of top grade vein opening leaf was once bought by Miss Xiaoyu from the vein opening restaurant in Kangcheng. She even showed off to Yang Zhao at that time. Where did the vein opening leaves go on the night when the pirates came? In fact, it is very simple. This batch of vein opening leaves was not in Yang Zhao's storage bag from the beginning. Instead, she put them in the big cave where Shang Jia lived. Yang Zhao was a small foundation building period, and he knew his own strength. This thing was the root of trouble for him. So before the pirates came, Yang Zhao obtained Shang Jia's consent and spent less than half a day to dig a large side room in her cave. Because Shang Jia loved to blow up the furnace when refining pills, she chose to live far away from various towns. There were few people near the cave, and a stranger would be very conspicuous in Shang Jia's eyes. And because she was one of the few with the highest combat power on the island, no one with a lower cultivation than her had the courage to explore Shang Jia's residence. In overseas places, the law is indifferent. If Shang Jia took action to discipline someone who could help them fight, the pirates were mixed in Black Pearl Island among the local workers. They could not afford to offend the Chindan stage monks, so no pirate had the courage to explore the residence of Shang Jia, a Chindan stage monk. Most of the stolen things were in the hands of those leaders, which younger brother would sacrifice his life for a few taels of silver. So except for Yang Zhao and Mu Fangaiu, a Chindan stage monk, the rest of the people did not know where Shang Jia lived. And those Chindan stage sea tribes did not even love the island, let alone the affairs of the human cultivators. Before the pirates came, Yang Zhao, with the help of Shang Jia, secretly transported these veined leaves to the side room and blocked the door of the side room tightly with earth-based magic. Two Xiaodao people and Xiaokao Chindan were left in the cave, each holding a specific wooden frog in their hands, so that they could notify Yang Zhao and others in case of an accident. And Xiaokao Chindan was the last unexpected Chindan. This person loves to pull out his roots and play behind the little bean man. Because of his height, Xiaokao Chindan doesn't like human cultivators. People on the island have always thought that he is a spirit creature and never thought that this green and cute little grass is also a Chindan cultivator. When they came out, the two of them blocked the outside hole and the big hole on the top of the mountain. In order to ensure authenticity, the two people took the trouble to shovel two large pieces of turf from a distance and spread them on the two new soils. If someone doesn't take the time to look carefully, it will definitely not be discovered. Because the pirates of Dazhao lack time the most. Otherwise, the pirates who stay on the island for 3 or 5 days will definitely be able to find this hole. But they can't. because as long as the time to rob the island exceeds, they will encounter the Imperial Court's garrison in this waters. These seafields are essentially owned by the Dazhao Imperial Court and then rented out. And the open vein leaf is a necessity for cultivators in the cultivation world, just like food. Without this thing, you can't cultivate. The main task and responsibility of the army stationed nearby is to protect the nearby sea areas. So as long as the pirates go to the island to rob, the nearby garrison will definitely come. The regular army is not something that these pirates can confront head on. It was just beyond Yang Zhao's expectation that no matter whether she had the open vein leaf in her hand, the pirates would come to trouble her. There were 3 parties recording detailed information for this court purchase. One party was the people sent by the court. One party was the workers on the island, represented by Supervisor Chen, and the remaining party was the Xiao Dao people. Shenroi asked the Xiao Dao people for so many people, which obviously meant that he did not trust Supervisor Chen and the court. But he had a high level of cultivation, and no one would confront him for such a small matter. Shenroi finished reading the list. Do the numbers match? Supervisor Chen and the clerk ignored each other and nodded in tacit understanding. The 3 of us are the same. There is no omission. The Uncle Wen was also very well behaved, and he directly took out a small stack of bills from his arms. Here are a total of 16,360 taels of silver bills. Please count them. If Yang Zhao wakes up, he will curl his lips when he sees this silver. This silver is not even 1/10 of what she spent on Black Pearl Island. If Yang Zhao is really a businessman, he will have to pawn his pants to compensate. Shenroi took the bill and weighed it, but did not count it. He took out a bill of 200 to 300 taels of silver from it and held it in front of the clerk with magic power. This little money will treat you to tea. The clerk was a little flattered. To be honest, when he knew that Yang Zhao was seriously injured and could not get up, and another great monk came to the island, the clerk thought that he might come here in vain and would not receive any tribute. But who would have thought that Shenroi, the great monk, actually gave it? Senior, you are so polite. We are all doing our job here. How can we take your silver? You keep it. When Shenroi said this, he had a distant expression on his face, as if he was asking you to get out of here and not join in the fun. The clerk had a stiff face and forced a smile. He put the banknotes in his pocket, bowed and said goodbye to Manager Chen, then got on the flying boat and ran away. The little bean man who followed them to count the accounts naturally followed. As soon as the people left, Dr. Qi had already dealt with Yang Zhao and asked Shenroi to go in. In fact, he had been ready a long time ago, but he heard the accounts being counted and didn't feel comfortable to disturb them. As soon as Shenroi went in, Yang Zhao smiled and admitted his mistake while lying on the bed. Grandmaster, I was sleepy just now and spoke without thinking. If you want to blame me, wait until I get better before you scold me, okay? Why are you scolding me if I'm fine? The little bean man outside grunted and brought a high stool to Yang Zhao and placed it next to him. Shenroi sat on it directly. At Shenroi's suggestion, the others all went out, leaving only a little bean man, the nurse. Alas, I underestimated your eye problem. I should have urged you to find a good doctor at that time. Yang Zhao listened to the grinning smile and knew that even if Shenroi reminded her, she would be very nervous and might not do it. At that time, she had just taken over Black Pearl Island and was very busy. There was no trusted confidant in the entire Black Pearl Island. If she left, it would be okay for 1 or 2 days, but if it lasted for a long time, Black Pearl Island would definitely be in chaos. Those silver mountains were smashed on Black Pearl Island. How could you let Yang Zhao bear to leave? In short, one is that Yang Zhao's cultivation is too weak, and the other is that there is no one who can calm the situation to help her. Master, how did you know that I was injured and came so quickly? During the 2 days of coma, Yang Zhao's perception of time was already distorted. The little bean man told me. Shenroi sat aside and chatted with Yang Zhao. You also know that the Yunayang temple in Kangcheng is still being repaired intermittently. There are some little bean men left in the temple to manage it. They told me. Shenroi said and looked at Yang Zhao with blame. You are a little girl. Why are you so reckless? You are not very skilled. If you encounter pirate robbery, just hide. Otherwise, why would you hire someone and spend money on it? Yang Zhao continued to smile foolishly. I just rushed forward in a fit of rage. In fact, only she knew whether she was hot-headed or not. Yang Zhao knew very well that these monks on the island were hired employees. They are not obliged to work for you. After all, they are not earning money to buy lives. If Yang Zhao did not take the initiative and set an example, those hired monks would not work hard. But these people did not work hard at the beginning, allowing the pirates to march straight in. What about those workers and children who evacuated the town in a panic and have not gone far? Do they still expect the mercy of the pirates? If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 412. Then you ask, if Yang Zhao regrets it now? He regrets it. Anyone who lies in bed unable to move and has to face a miserable future will feel regret in his heart. But, alas. Shenroi saw Yang Zhao's indifferent attitude and knew that his words were in vain. Wulian Xianzhen, what can I say to you? Shenroi took out a stack of bills. This is the bill of exchange for the court. To purchase the open vein leaves, you put it away first. Yang Zhao smiled bitterly. Master, you take these bills first. I will let Xiaodaran calculate the approximate expenses of rebuilding the island. Please help me pay this silver. I'm afraid I can't help in the next few days. The whole island was in a mess due to the scourge of pirates. It takes a lot of financial, material and human resources to restore it to its original state. There are also various losses on the island, such as food, formation building materials, and pirates coming to the island. Do you still expect them to return empty-handed? The thief does not leave empty-handed, and the pirates are no exception. In summary, silver is needed. Yang Zhao is now lying in bed, with no time or energy to lead and participate in the work on the island. Fortunately, she is not available on this island, but silver is not available. As long as the silver is paid, the Xiaodao people will naturally help solve other problems. However, the silver cannot be handed over to the Xiaodao people. Shenroi, the great monk, must keep an eye on it. You only worry about these things. Shenroi said disdainfully, but he took the silver and took on these things. Just then, there was a knock on the door. The food is ready. After opening the door, several little people came in with pots and pans. We will cook some seafood porridge first, so that Comrade Yang can fill his stomach first. If it is not enough, there is more in the pot. A large pot of seafood porridge with various seafood in it was brought in, and the whole room was filled with fresh fragrance. Another pot was fishball soup, with white and tender fish meatballs floating in the soup, mixed with tender green vegetables, which looked very appetizing. There was also a plate of stir-fried vegetables. Yang Zhao knew that he was a fellow villager as soon as he saw the cooking style. Although Dr. Qi had said that she would be given a lot of fish and meat, in the minds of the villagers, one should not eat too greasy food when sick. Not eating greasy food, but also having fish and meat. This requirement may be a bit harsh for other ethnic groups, but it is easy to solve for the Xiaodao people. You eat first, take a nap after eating, and I will come to see you in the afternoon. Yang Zhao's room was not too big. Seeing this, Shenroi left the room with the extra people, leaving only the Xiaodao nurse. Yang Zhao lay on the bed, and the Xiaodao nurse fed her one spoonful after another, blowing it cool like feeding a baby, and carefully comforted her while eating. If it weren't for the fact that Yang Zhao's body was full of bandages and the wounds would split when she moved, she would say that she would eat by herself. This is not just an adult-like sense of shame, but a deeper sense of powerlessness that can only accept others to take care of oneself, but can't do anything. This sense of powerlessness makes any adult panic and fear. Fortunately, the Xiaodao nurse is a talkative and cheerful person, and she eased Yang Zhao's embarrassment in just a few words. When eating the second bowl of seafood porridge, the nurse said that Yang Zhao had a strong appetite and recovered well. When eating the third bowl, the nurse Xiaodaran's face was a little hesitant. But thinking of the leader who told him that Yang Zhao would eat a lot when he came, the nurse Xiaodaran still fed her. But when Yang Zhao asked for the fourth bowl, Xiaodaran said she would not dare to give it to her and ran out to ask Dr. Qi before she dared to feed her. One bowl of seafood porridge and one plate of meatballs were not enough. Xiaodaran brought Yang Zhao 3 bowls of seafood porridge, 2 large bowls of fish balls, 2 plates of vegetables, and a large bowl of wild fruit syrup. Only then did Yang Zhao feel a little full. At this time, the nurse Xiaodaran was numb. Yang Zhao's appetite seriously impacted the nurse's 3 views, so when he was feeding her, his eyes kept wandering and looking at Yang Zhao's stomach. In his limited life, he had never seen someone who could eat so much. Even if he was a bulimic, it was impossible for him to eat so much. You have to know that this plate of seafood porridge weighs at least 6 pounds, plus 2 equally large bowls of fish balls, so the vegetables and juice slipped through the cracks in Yang Zhao's place. The little bean nurse went out with a bowl in a daze, and Yang Zhao was left alone in the room. Originally, the little bean wanted to stay, but Yang Zhao fought for a little personal space in the name of wanting to be quiet. She took out her cell phone with trembling hands, and with difficulty, took out her own Dao card from under her pillow. This Dao card was taken down by Dr. Qi when she was treating her injuries, and he took a look at it and stuffed it under her pillow. The country is rich and the people are strong only asked 3 questions on the phone. Guo Fumin Qiang, how is your injury? Guo Fumin Qiang, do you have any medicine? Guo Fumin Qiang, are you awake? Yang Zhao, I'm awake and my injuries have been treated. Guo Fumin Qiang, you have suffered, kid. Guo Fumin Qiang, don't worry, we have almost finished talking with Shen Sishan. We will do our best to treat your meridians. Yang Zhao's heart skipped a beat. It seems that the negotiation with Shen Sishan was not going smoothly. If it was going smoothly, Guo Fumin Qiang would not have to say this. He would have been more certain and even told her the progress of their consultation with the doctor to reassure her. Yang Zhao, Shen Sishan doesn't want to, right? Guo Fumin Qiang, Kit, what are you thinking about? There's no difficulty in the negotiation. Just wait. Yang Zhao, hey, Shen Sishan is not our relative, so it's normal that he doesn't want to help. Yang Zhao, it's okay to bother him once, but he won't be willing to bother him the second time. Yang Zhao, it depends on whether he is willing to exchange favors for money. If he doesn't want to, we can't force him to accept it. Guo Fumin Qiang, the reason why he hasn't agreed yet is just because the benefits we give him haven't satisfied him, and the higher ups have given us the bottom line for the negotiations. Guo Fumin Qiang, our bottom line is that there is no bottom line. We will do our best to get you the best doctor. Guo Fumin Qiang, remember that our entire country is standing behind you. We can't protect you, but we will do everything we can to protect you. Yang Zhao felt his nose sore and tears fell uncontrollably. People always become more sentimental when they are sick. Yang Zhao, you don't have to worry too much, or you'll be led by the nose. Yang Zhao, I've also asked someone to look for him. Maybe there's news now. I'll ask later, and I'll tell you as soon as I have news. Yang Zhao put her phone into her Kayankan bag and took out the messenger from the pillow. She hoped to see good news in this magic weapon. Chapter 413. In Zhuanru building, the sky-high price tasks issued by Yang Zhao still topped the list, and the discussion continued. After all, interests are always the easiest thing to attract people's attention. Especially this kind of huge interests, it always makes people jealous. But where there are interests, there are people who pursue interests. When Yang Zhao scrolled down the news, he found several people who recommended themselves. But Yang Zhao didn't know any of them. There was no way. She looked at the little bean man guarding the bed account outside the door. The little bean man had just sat outside in the sun for a few minutes when he heard Yang Zhao's call. What's wrong? Do you want to go to the toilet? It stands to reason that, after eating and drinking, the next thing should be to poop. No, I just finished eating. Is this matter so urgent? After all, the food in the stomach has not been digested yet. Even birds with straight intestines can't digest it so quickly. She just ate a lot, not indigestion. Yang Zhao once again experienced the difficulties of the patient. This person must not be sick and must not be seriously ill. Otherwise, once lying in bed, all dignity and face will be gone. The little bean man slapped his forehead. Hi, my occupational disease has come back. I forgot that you don't need an fourth. What do you want to talk to me about? I want to trouble you to ask Dr. Key. She didn't know him, but someone did. Dr. Key found a bench and sat next to Yang Zhao. The researchers who met with her were these doctors who recommended themselves. This one called ZHU Shisun Lang is not bad. He has been practicing medicine for nearly 100 years and has a good reputation in the medical community. However, it is said that he was originally a bright spirit beast and has the habit of building nests with gold and silver, so people who don't have silver don't need to go to him. Yang Zhao knew it in his heart. Does this ZHU Shisun Lang do much research on meridians? Dr. Key thought for a while. Because he was originally a bright spirit beast, he has done more research on blood diseases. As you know, many cultivators and monsters don't have their own inheritance. Sometimes the skills will conflict with the original blood. This ZHU Shisun Lang has achieved more in this regard. I don't know. Yang Zhao felt that he had learned another little common sense of life in the world of cultivation. It turns out that if the skills don't match, they will conflict with one's own blood. Yang Zhao thought of Shenryu and couldn't help feeling lucky. Then Dr. Key, can you take a look and see if there is any doctor suitable for me? Dr. Key picked one out of the list. Yao Seijiang. Yang Zhao took a look and found that, although this person also spoke below, he did not recommend himself, but was just envious of getting rich overnight with others. Is he a good doctor? No. Dr. Key answered very straightforwardly. He is not even a doctor. He deals in medicinal materials. Ah. Yang Zhao paused and came to his senses. Do you mean for me to buy some hard-to-buy medicinal materials from him? No, he has no way to sell the medicinal materials I mentioned. He only deals in those common medicinal materials in large quantities. Ah. Yang Zhao was sick at the moment. His brain was working slowly, and he didn't understand what Dr. Key meant for a while. Others may not know, but I do know some gossip. This person is now in charge of the medicinal materials business in the Rift Roller Valley. Yang Zhao's eyes lit up. The senior Feng Yaozhe of the Rift Roller Valley was one of the 2 doctors recommended by Dr. Key. This Yuanying stage great monk has only stayed in the Rift Roller Valley in recent years and would not go out easily. Yang Zhao's hands and feet were inconvenient, so she found a little bean man who was familiar with the alien language to operate her messenger magic weapon and began to contact Yao Seijiang. Chapter 414. Yao Seijiang. When using this traditional magic weapon, you need to input information into it with spiritual power. Xiaodaran can only complete this work with the help of Dr. Key. With Xiaodaran's unremitting efforts, Yang Zhao and his team finally contacted Yao Seijiang. The next step is to bribe people, from silver to business. As long as there is a problem that can be solved with silver, it is not a problem for Xiaodaran. Yao Seijiang was also prepared for Yang Zhao to contact him. After a few pleasantries, the 2 sides began to test each other. It can be said that the reason why he showed up in the Sky High reward was to wait for Yang Zhao to find him. The man has feelings and the concubine has intentions, and the 2 sides can be said to hit it off. However, there are a few small differences in the conditions between the 2 sides. The main difference is that these Xiaodaran found by Yang Zhao cannot make the decision. Yao Seijiang was well prepared and had already listed the conditions, while Yang Zhao was unprepared and was caught off guard. But the condition proposed by the other party, whether in the eyes of Yang Zhao or Xiaodaran, is like giving a pillow when you want to sleep, which is simply a pleasant surprise. Only Dr. Key kept saying that Yao Seijiang was taking advantage of him. Fearing that Yao Seijiang would think that the attitude here was bad and deliberately delay, a little bean man on the spot turned into a little bean and fell to the ground with a puff. Dr. Key had seen it once before, and it was still a bit strange to see it the second time. You little bean men are so executive, don't you prepare for people? This matter can't be delayed. It's just that the 2 of us soldiers have little authority, otherwise that little thing would have been settled long ago. Another little bean man picked up the bean and stuffed it into Yang Zhao. Call him over in 10 minutes. I'll have a good chat with this old man Yao here. Delay some time so that he won't think we are not enthusiastic enough. After saying that, he turned around and started chatting with Yao Seijiang again. Dr. Key lowered his head and said to Yang Zhao, Give me the traction bean. You shouldn't use your magic power now. Yang Zhao's hand loosened, and Dr. Qi picked up the traction bean from her hand and looked at it curiously. 10 minutes passed quickly, and the little bean man came back with an excited look. Our leader said that no matter how much money he wants, we have agreed to it. We are going to use silver to stun him. Let's get started. Roar. Xiaodaran stared at the messenger instrument with great energy. With the help of Dr. Qi, he roughly reached a medical purchase contract with Yao Zhejiang. Yang Zhao will buy a batch of medicinal materials from him every year in the next 5 years at a price 15% lower than the market price. In the first year, it will cost 50,000 taels of silver, and then increase the transaction volume by 30% every year. In 5 years, the medicinal materials business will be nearly 450,000 taels of silver. After 5 years, if both parties are satisfied, they can discuss the renewal of the contract again. This is obviously not a business with Yao Zhejiang alone, but a business with the entire Rift Roller Valley. This is a huge and long-lasting capital flow for a declining outsider sect. With this money, they can consolidate the foundation of the medicinal materials planting industry in the Rift Roller Valley, promote the positive development of the entire sect economy, and then nourish the entire sect. At least every year, they can take out more silver to go around the world, to find apprentices who meet the requirements of their sect. Without money, you can't move forward. This saying is not only applicable to the ancient and modern times, but also to the world of cultivation. In the eyes of Dr. Qi, the 15% discount on the market price is pure extortion. As a doctor, he deals with medicinal materials every day. How can he not know the tricks? The 10 copper coins from the herbal farmers can be sold for 80 copper coins after processing and transportation to the pharmacy. Only conscientious pharmacies in the market sell at this price. Basically, they sell for 100 copper coins to 110 copper coins. 15% lower than the market price. Although the Rift Roller Valley seems to make a little less money than retail sales, it saves a lot of time costs. The price they sell to middlemen is even lower than this. It is easier to make money than robbing shops. It is simply making money with your eyes closed. Under this condition, major herbal medicine merchants are willing to reduce the price by another 15%. The key is that, after negotiating such a loss-making business, the Xiaodao people were actually excited and seemed to be celebrating. This? Whose business is done like this? Will he not be punished for being such a spendthrift in business? If it were Dr. Qi, she would definitely kick this little guy out. Injuries can be treated, but stupidity cannot be cured. As for Yang Zhao, who was also happy, Dr. Qi could understand. After all, any cultivator with a little ambition would not care too much about money if they met Yang Zhao's situation. It's another story for those without money. Yang Zhao couldn't help but grin. Even though it involved the wound on his head, he couldn't control the smile on his face. This was the best news she had heard in recent days. Chapter 415. In the evening, Yang Zhao ate the spirit beast meat that Shangjia bought. This is a kind of sea beast meat with thick fat. When fried over a low fire, it is full of fragrance. The most important thing is that this food is full of spiritual power, which can make Yang Zhao feel full quickly. Spirit beast meat can better provide Yang Zhao with energy to heal his body. Good news always comes one after another. Feng from the Rift Roller Valley loosened up here, and Shen Xishan also loosened up. The negotiations that had been deadlocked for nearly 2 days finally had a result. Feng from the Rift Roller Valley and Luan Chuangshan arrived at Black Pearl Island and began to consult Yang Zhao. Feng was followed by people from the Rift Roller Valley. These people came here to discuss the details of the cooperation between the two parties. The few Little Beam people following Luan Chuangshan were the staff who communicated with Shen Xishan. This time they came to see Yang Zhao and to take over the business negotiations of the Rift Roller Valley. But these things are not what Yang Zhao wants to worry about. Feng from the Rift Roller Valley was another heretic monk. He looked to be in his 40s, with a serious face and a head of blue hair that made him look more lively. Luan Chuangshan was even more distinctive. He was a little old man of 1.6 meters, with thin arms and legs, and a head of green hair with a hint of brown red. A tender green leaf was trembling on his hair. He didn't look like a human. When the two came, Dr. Qi's eyes almost laughed out loud. He followed the two doctors like a little tail, serving tea and water, and handling miscellaneous items. He pushed aside the apprentices who had originally followed him. Luan Chuangshan and Feng examined Yang Zhao carefully again, then looked at each other and went out. It was Shenroi who was waiting outside the door. Shenroi bowed his head and said, "My two Taoist friends, how is Yang Zhao's injury?" Luan Chuangshan spoke to Shenroi first. "Young friend, Yang's meridian injury is difficult to treat. The injury is too serious. If it is not treated well, there is a risk that he will never recover." Feng Yaozhe also followed behind and echoed, "The most troublesome thing is that Yang Zhao's cultivation is too low and her physical fitness is too weak. Many of my treatment methods are useless." To these two people, a cultivator in the foundation building stage is as weak as a bug in their eyes. They can crush her with a little force of their fingers. Wanting to cure Yang Zhao is like building a temple in a nutshell. What's the difference? Shenroi was unmoved. Before these two people came, Dr. Qi had told him about the situation. He was not surprised by this result. Do the two doctors have any solution? Luan Chuangshan hesitated for a moment. "The most reliable way I can think of now is to borrow the meridians, transplant the meridians from the alien beast into her body, and restore those eroded meridians. Although this method is not 100% perfect, it is the smallest and easiest to succeed." Shenroi pondered for a moment, and Brick looked at Feng Yaozhe in the Rift Roller Valley again. "Dr. Feng, what do you think?" Feng Yaozhe and Luan Chuangshan looked at each other, and they both knew that Shenroi was not satisfied with the solution of meridian transplantation, so they asked him again. Feng Yaozhe pondered for a moment, and then said, "There are only a few ways to restore the meridians of foundation building cultivators. Transplanting meridians is the most reliable, and the recovery is also good. Other treatment methods are very dangerous. Shenroi Wulian Xianzhen, although vein transplantation is safe, my child has a bad temper and is young and arrogant. If she encounters obstacles in the future because of this matter, she will be frustrated to death." Sorry. Chapter 416. Treatment Method. Then, how about replacing it with a magic weapon? Luan Chuangshan proposed a different idea. The Great Zhao has not made any progress in the research of internal magic weapons, but the progress of the Yao Lehe realm in this area is very outstanding. Over the past 10 years, the feedback has been very good. It's just that the price is dozens of times that of transplanting susceptible meridians, but we are not short of money. Luan Chuangshan took out a messenger magic weapon from his sleeve and enlarged something like an advertisement page in midair for Shenroi and the others to see. There is a detailed introduction to this magic weapon on it, and the formations engraved on the magic weapon are also honestly displayed on the surface. There are also the number and population of magic weapon application carriers, and the success and failure cases are recorded in detail. After more than 10 years of technological iteration, this technology has become relatively mature. From the previous failure rate of more than 20% to less than 1 in 10,000 now. This magic weapon has several advantages. First, there will be no rejection reaction like the transplantation of alien beast meridians. Second, the magic weapon meridians can be upgraded in real time. That is, when the carrier of the meridian increases its own cultivation, the magic weapon meridians will also be strengthened along with the strengthening of other normal meridians. This ensures the carrier's future cultivation problems. It was the first time that Shenroi knew that there was such a thing in the cultivation world. It sounded very grand, but the application time of this thing is too short. It doesn't mean that there will be no problem in more than 10 years, just because it is fine now. Luan Chuangshan did not agree with this view. He has been observing and following this technology for more than 10 years, and has his own understanding and attitude towards this matter. But in more than 10 years, this kind of magic tool meridian will be more perfect. It has many advantages such as low implantation risk, no rejection reaction, and self-upgrade. Except for being a little expensive, there are no other disadvantages. The magic tool is just a tool after all, and there is no tool that will not go wrong. The only difference is the length of time and the size of the problem. Shenroi also has his own opinions and persistence in this regard. If the human body is compared to a tool, then the human body can heal itself to a high degree, but tools do not have this option. If there is something wrong, it can only rely on others. The simplest example is that, if something goes wrong at a critical moment, you can't expect Yang Zhao to dig it out of her body and repair it by herself. You can't guarantee that there is someone who can repair this magic weapon near her at that time. After all, you also said that the great Zhao has not made any progress in this regard. This is equivalent to putting your lifeblood in the hands of others. For a person in the Red County of Shenzhou, since ancient times, from individuals to the whole country, once such a thing happens, it is a precursor to death. For example, ordinary people sell themselves as slaves. With the hand of the body contract, life and death are determined by others. So selling children and daughters was called a residual drama at that time. And for a country, can salt and iron be handed over to others? For a cultivator, what is the difference between practicing the truth, if you can't control your meridians yourself, and rushing to get a body contract? If there is a problem at that time, if others want to repair it for you, they will repair it for you, and if they don't want to repair it for you, they won't repair it for you. Moreover, Shenryu had another worry about this matter. Cultivation is not a short-term matter. Just because it was fine more than 10 years ago does not mean it will be fine 100 years later. Just because it was fine in the foundation building stage does not mean it will be fine in the golden elixir stage. And just because it was fine in the golden elixir stage does not mean it will be fine in the natal infant stage. In Shenryu's eyes, things that are more than 10 years old are not credible. Facing Shenryu's tough attitude, Luan Chuangsheng had nothing to say. For a doctor, the patient is actually the easiest to deal with, and the most difficult to deal with is actually the patient's family. Because the patient does not have the energy and courage to talk nonsense with the doctor. After all, you have to count on others to treat you and save your life. Some patients are in a coma when they see the doctor and can't say a word. But the family members who are not sick are very energetic and have time for this. Luan Chuangsheng's side has stopped, and the wind in the Rift Roller Valley is finding Shenryu's life pulse again. Actually, you want to let Yang Zhao's own meridians recover, right? Shenryu sighed. This method is the safest. Yang Zhao still has a long way to go. How can he pin his hopes on external things? Everyone present fell silent. To be honest, Shenryu's words were actually a bit self-boasting. After all, the matter of cultivation is full of great uncertainty. Let alone an outsider cultivator, even a student in the academy, who dares to say that he is pointing his sword to the avenue so carelessly. Feng Yu rubbed the little finger of his left hand with his right hand. I do have a method that can meet your requirements, but this method is very risky. If you are not careful, a life may be lost. Hearing this, Luan Chuangsheng frowned. As colleagues with similar medical skills, he immediately reacted to what Feng Yu said just when he started. Feng Dao, you. Hey. Shenryu knew from the reactions of the two that this method must be very controversial in the medical community. You say. Feng Yu was stroking his little finger and organizing his words in his mind. There is one thing you should know, fellow Daoist Shen. Every time a cultivator crosses the threshold, there will be a process of meridian advancement so that he can better accept the more refined spiritual power obtained after future cultivation. For example, in the key refining stage, the foundation building stage, and the foundation building stage, the meridian advancement will change the most in just 1 or 2 days. Although Shenryu understood what Feng Yu was saying, he didn't know what this had to do with Yang Zhao. Then what? Feng Yu simply used his spiritual power to draw a simple meridian map in midair. There were only 2 meridians in this map, and both meridians were broken. Yang Zhao's main problem now is that the meridians have been eroded to nothing. When the spiritual power is transferred to these places, it will directly dissipate in the flesh and blood, and it can't run smoothly. And because of the differences between individual organisms, even if they are of the same race, there will be subtle differences in meridians. Feng Yu pointed to one of the meridians in midair. When the meridians are advancing, the broken meridians will show their original position and width in the tide of spiritual power without any error. Of course, this is also the time when the rejection of foreign meridians is the most serious. In the process of the cultivator's breakthrough and advancement, when this meridian has been eroded, in the inertia of advancement, the spiritual power that helps the meridians advance will form an extremely thin meridian composed of spiritual power for the cultivator to advance. This process is an instinct in the body. Shenryu was not the first time to come into contact with cultivation. He immediately discovered the fatal point here. When advancing, this phenomenon does occur, but the meridians composed of spiritual power can only last for a short period of time. Basically, they will collapse within a few breaths, causing the cultivator to be unable to advance at all. Chapter 417. Dikai Chang. When the spiritual power has problems in the meridians, it is the body's instinctive reaction to create an energy channel in a short time to protect itself. But this time is very short. It will be gone in the blink of an eye. So what's the use of this thing? The time is short. Let's extend it. Feng Yaozhe began to explain the mystery in detail. Simply put, when Yang Zhao advanced to the golden core, the human body's instinctive desire for advancement will compress a large amount of spiritual power into a solid, forming an energy channel for people to upgrade, commonly known as a false meridian. The reason for the short time is that this channel is formed by the accumulation of high spiritual power, but because of the problem of meridian rupture, the damaged area itself is a spiritual power depression. The body instinctively desires spiritual power, and this energy channel will be robbed of all the nearby flesh in a very short time, causing the false meridian to be cut off again. Feng Yaozhe meant to suppress all the manner of Yang Zhao's body when he advanced to those broken meridians, to increase the time this channel lasts. Then use external objects to intervene, and this external object is Dikai insect. The Dichi insect is a very tiny insect. When you hold it in your hand, it looks like a small black dot. This insect has a characteristic. When a certain number of Dichi insects gather together, they will breed their eggs in the place where the spiritual power is most concentrated. These spiritual powers are the best food for the larvae after the eggs hatch. And the pseudo-meridian that compresses the spiritual power into a solid is the best place to lay eggs. Because of their biological characteristics, they lay their eggs in the area where the spiritual power is dense. In order to protect the more fragile eggs and prevent the spiritual power from eroding the eggs, their eggshells have the best characteristics of dredging spiritual power. The spiritual power can freely pass between eggs without harming the eggs themselves. And because the eggs are small and dense, the gap between eggs is relatively small, and the higher concentration of spiritual power in the meridians can flow better. Before hatching, these eggs are the best substitute meridians. The next thing is simple. Before these insects hatch, use the body's self-recovery to nourish these broken meridians bit by bit. The meridians developed by this method are exactly the same as the original ones. Even the positions are exactly the same. It looks perfect. Shenroi took out 2 large silver snails from somewhere and started to spin them. If it is really perfect, you would have said this method a long time ago. The risk must be great. Of course, otherwise, we would have said such a useful method a long time ago. Why would we recommend something else to you? Feng smiled again. The dangers mainly lie in the following places. First, when a cultivator advances, he is required to have no distractions, and when she advances, we are treating her injuries, which is the biggest disturbance. Yang Zhao is likely to go crazy. Second, compressing her spiritual power. I can see that she has only been building her foundation for a little over a year. Can her physical fitness withstand the huge pressure in her body when compressing her spiritual power? Third, how to form a pill. The injury to the meridians will become more and more serious if it is delayed, and you know the risks that Yang Zhao faces when he forcibly forms a pill with his cultivation level. This time, the silver snail in Shenroi's hand turned faster. Are there no other ways? The first 2 methods are the least dangerous and relatively the most beneficial, while the last method is the most beneficial and the most risky. You look down on the other methods even more. The little beam people around him stared in amazement as Luan Chuangshan plucked off the leaf on his head and folded it in his hands. A little bit of tender green leaves seeped out from the leaf stem, glittering in the sunlight. If you don't cut yourself with a knife, you don't know the pain. If your life is not your own, you don't know how to cherish it. This matter, you, as a master, can't decide at all. You should ask the girl. I think the girl is willing to choose the meridian magic weapon. Feng dispersed the meridian map floating in the air and nodded. Although he proposed the last method, the 2 methods in front of him were the most suitable. Doctors treat diseases and save lives, so they will naturally tend to the one with the least risk and can still cure the disease. Although the high-risk treatment method of Dikaichang is good, the high risk is also numbing. The three stood in silence for a while, and Shenroi decided to let Yang Zhao choose. At this time, Yang Zhao was lying on the bed drinking iced wild fruit syrup. The Little Bean people dug a deep pit in the ground of Yang Zhao's yard, and Shenroi put a few large ice cubes in it. From then on, Yang Zhao, who was lying on the bed recuperating from his injuries, could not do without this iced wild fruit syrup. It was really not cool on the island in summer. Ever since Yang Zhao was injured, he began to be afraid of cold and heat. After listening to the three methods, she began to ask one by one, if you choose the first two, according to normal practice, how many years will it take me to form a pill? Luan Chuangsheng and Feng looked at each other again, and Luan Chuangsheng spoke first. If you originally formed a pill in 3 years, the alien beast meridian transplantation will be postponed for about a year according to the normal process. And the meridian magic weapon will also be delayed for more than half a year. One takes 30% more time, and the other takes 16% more time. Yang Zhao asked another question. How difficult is it to form a pill? Feng Yaozhe, the specific value varies from person to person, but it is definitely more difficult than before. However, forming a pill is difficult in the first place, and many cultivators cannot make a pill. Yang Zhao unconsciously stroked his clothes. After forming a pill, how much slower will the progress of cultivation be than normal? Luan Chuangsheng, everyone's physique is different, and the speed of cultivation varies greatly. You don't have to worry about this. It's good enough to form a pill. Maybe one day you will encounter a great opportunity and soar to the sky. The implication is that, if there is no great opportunity, don't think about practicing. Yang Zhao felt a toothache. Then how does the Dika insect get into my body? Luan Chuangsheng was startled. He didn't expect Yang Zhao to change the topic so quickly. Just, they will drill in by themselves. Don't worry, they are small, so it won't hurt that much. The bugs are eating into my flesh. And, yes, Yang Zhao felt his tooth hurt even more. Not only did it hurt, but it also made him feel sour. If Shenroi hadn't seen her lying in bed, she would have summoned a water ball and hit her in the face to wake Yang Zhao up. You don't care about your life, but why do you care about the bugs? Yang Zhao grinned bitterly. The life-threatening situation is not something I can control, but this bug can't spare my life physically, but psychologically it wants me to die. Chapter 418. As soon as Shenroi heard Yang Zhao's words, she frowned and couldn't let it go. Young people always seem to have a passion to not fear life and death. Why did you choose the most dangerous one? Yang Zhao was also helpless, because the first two choices make me afraid of the future. This was a bit confusing, so Yang Zhao continued to explain. I'm now the first in the class, who attends review classes every day, and my family spends a lot of money to support me. Now tell me that, even if I attend more review classes, and put in more efforts, my grades will gradually fall behind. In the future, I may not even be able to get into high school, let alone college. I feel suffocated when I think about this future. What a great opportunity. This is just gambling on luck. Who would put their hopes on this? What's the difference between this and spending $2 to win a lottery ticket of 5 million? Think about her, a mortal. How could she possibly win 5 million? Winning 500 is good enough, and she has spent a lot of luck. University. High school. Can Yang Zhao and others only read university after high school? What is a review class? Putting these words in a sentence, Shenroi felt awkward, but he understood the meaning. The advantage of Chinese is that, even if you are not familiar with some words, you can still understand the general meaning. Yang Zhao, don't make a decision in a hot-blooded manner. Let's go out first. Calm down and think about it carefully. I will ask you tomorrow. If you still make this decision, I will fully support you. Shenroi took the two doctors out of the house, and the little bean man who took care of Yang Zhao began to reign. The little bean man who took care of Yang Zhao today was the little bean man doctor who was on duty in the town. Seeing that Yang Zhao was a little depressed, he whispered a suggestion. Why don't you discuss this matter with your family and listen to your parents' opinions? Yang Zhao was tempted for a moment, but then suppressed his thoughts. My father has a bad heart, and my mother can't hide things on her face. We can't tell them about this. The little bean man opened his mouth, but didn't say anything. After a while, he began to change the subject. In the past 2 days, we have almost dealt with the wounded in the town. Then he began to nag about the Black Pearl Island in the past few days. You don't know, Black Pearl Island has been miserable these days, like a disaster area, with few houses standing up, and they are all burned and soaked. Many workers came back and cried, pitiful. The devastated town stunned the workers who had just returned. Many of them began to cry, scold the pirates, and began to dig the ruins with their bare hands, trying to find 1 or 2 useful tools. As the saying goes, a broken home is worth a fortune. For poor families, a straw mat and a kitchen knife take a lot of effort to save. This time, the pirates made everyone's wealth vanish, and they didn't even have a place to stay at night. How could they not be hit hard? Later, the Little Bean people looked at this heart-wrenching scene and felt bad, and began to organize people to help the workers. But in addition to helping with the digging, they also had another purpose, which was to search the ruins for the outdoor cameras that were installed in every corner of the town at the beginning. After seeing this man-made disaster, these cameras had long been buried in the ruins and disappeared. When the doctors Yang Zhao arrived, everyone organized the sick and injured to receive treatment. I have been very slack in the past few days and doubted myself. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 419. The Yang Zhao people who followed the workers in the town were working hard, but the doctors assigned to each town started arguing with each other. There was only one topic for the argument, whether to prescribe antibiotics for adults and children with fever. These antibiotics were prepared by Guofuminqiang for Yang Zhao. The amount seemed to be a drop in the bucket on the small island with thousands of people. Yang Zhao buried the stuff in sugar, and she covered the sugar with a tattered bag, and hid it in the corner of the utility room. The utility rooms in each town were at least made of pure stone, and they were filled with tools used by the workers on the island for daily work. They were large, messy and without oil and water. Such places were not as eye-catching as granaries. Pirates robbed some food in each town, but some of these utility rooms collapsed, but none were lost. This utility room was the first to be cleaned out by the Yang Zhao people. For some bloody abrasions, the Yang Zhao doctors sprinkled sugar on their wounds. When encountering wounded and sick people with fever and inflammation, the Yang Zhao people were in trouble. Because the humans in the other world are the same as them, can antibiotics and anti-inflammatory drugs, which have not been subjected to biological experiments, be used at will in the other world? Medicines are 3-point poisons, and drug allergies are fatal. How did you solve this problem in the end? Yang Zhao, who was lying on the bed, also became worried. How can it be solved? At first, no one used it, but later some children had a fever and foamed at the mouth, so we used it as a last resort. Yang Zhao's heart was also tightened. What was the result? The Little Bean doctor, don't worry, the child is now saved, but those anti-inflammatory drugs are not used, unless it is absolutely necessary. Why? Isn't it usable? Yang Zhao was puzzled. Haha, because of a loss of conscience. The Little Bean doctor couldn't help laughing. This matter is hard to explain to outsiders. Yang Zhao didn't know where the loss of conscience was. He majored in English, and had never learned about medicine. But she could still understand the attitude of the Little Bean doctor who was unwilling to mention it, so she naturally changed the subject. Where do the workers on the island live now? After all, most of the houses collapsed. Sleeping in the wild at night is bearable for adults, but what about children? There is also the issue of food. Because Yang Zhao was recovering from his injuries, these troubles never reached her ears. First, build a few wind-resistant straw huts, and the injured and sick children will live there first. The rest of the people can only bear it for now. As he spoke, the doctor slapped his forehead. Oh, there is something I forgot to tell you. Yesterday morning, a large fleet came outside, saying that they were from the Four Seas Trading Company, selling quilts, nails, food and other things. No, the Four Seas Trading Company? Is the Four Seas Trading Company so well informed? And this speed is so fast, it's a bit abnormal. In order to have a larger carrying capacity, the ships of the Four Seas Trading Company are all large displacement sea ships, so the speed should not be fast. They were able to get to Black Pearl Island so quickly, it seems that they received the news long before the pirates came. Yang Zhao had a toothache. If he had known that Sahai Trading Company was so well informed, he would have bought some information from it. However, being well informed also has its advantages. At least it has brought a way out for everyone on the island. When it comes to Sahai Trading Company, Yang Zhao's thoughts spread uncontrollably to the Palm Thunder. Has this thing been used? Yang Zhao's head was a little confused, and he couldn't remember it. This thing cost a lot of money. If it was not used, the money would be wasted. Later, he learned that this Palm Thunder was also used, but the scope of use was not as wide as Yang Zhao expected at the beginning. Most of these Palm Thunders were used to deal with those marine creatures that crawled ashore. Otherwise the Little Beam people alone could not stop so many marine creatures from coming ashore. But it was not so useful for pirates. These cultivators on the island were not as organized and disciplined as the workers in Shandafang. They were fighting on their own. Throwing out Palm Thunders could easily cause accidental injuries. When Sahai Trading Company came, Yang Zhao's hanging heart was completely put down. When Shenroi came to ask the next day, Yang Zhao still gave the same answer. I fear danger, but I fear a hopeless future even more. Seeing her firm attitude, Shenroi and the other three swallowed their words of advice and began to discuss how to proceed with the first step. Dan formation. Normally, people who form Dan in the foundation building period practice day after day, and when they reach a certain level of cultivation, it will come naturally. But Yang Zhao didn't have time to accumulate time. So at Luan Chuangshen's suggestion, the two parties went hand in hand. Luan Chuangsheng and Feng were responsible for using elixirs, formations and other means to increase Yang Zhao's physical strength in a short period of time so that her body could adapt to the spiritual strength of Dan formation. And Shenroi cheated Yang Zhao by offering incense and improving his cultivation. I just remembered that I debunked the first online rumor in the past few days. Millions of people become gods is fake. Oh yeah. Chapter 420. From that day on, Feng from the Rift Roller Valley began to wait on Black Pearl Island to prepare medicine for Yang Zhao. Every day, he would go to Yunshan City to buy medicine and make it according to Yang Zhao's condition. The main focus was on freshness. Luan Chuangshen left Black Pearl Island and took a team of Little Bean people to buy the magic tools to be used. Yunshan City is a prosperous city overseas, but it cannot be compared with the big cities on land. The human race and the sea race each account for half, and the corresponding weapon trainers are pitiful. After all, the sea race does not have such a high demand for magic tools. With Feng in hand again, Yang Zhao's mouth has never been sweet again. All kinds of medicinal soups and pills are stuffed into her stomach, and all kinds of strange things are asked to eat. The key is that those things are not only bitter, but also have a sticky sweetness in the bitterness, and a sour taste in the spiciness. After drinking the medicine twice, Yang Zhao didn't even want to drink sugar water. Her tongue was numb from taking medicine, and eating every day became a mechanical action, just to fill her stomach. The key is that it is not enough to just lose your mouth. Yang Zhao is also not feeling well. Because of the broken meridians, she can't run the great circulation of heaven on her own when she is practicing. So when she is practicing, she has to sacrifice incense to improve her cultivation under the supervision of Shenroi. In this process, after Yang Zhao sacrifices a little bit of incense to become spiritual power, Shenroi will break this spiritual power and let it spread throughout her body. The process of breaking the spiritual power is painful, like thousands of steel needles rushing in the flesh, and every time it hurts Yang Zhao sweats and soaks her clothes. Because exchanging spiritual power with sacrificing incense is very simple, it can be done in more than 10 minutes. In order to speed up the cultivation as soon as possible, this process must be done more than 20 times a day. Shenroi had to comfort her. Only those who have suffered the most can become the best. Don't worry, you will get used to the pain. It's not that you will get used to the pain, but you will get used to the pain. And this job consumes a lot of incense. In a few days, in Yang Zhao's soul, the incense seemed to fade a little. In the past, the main consumption of incense was in two aspects. On the one hand, incense was used to exchange the right to use a Dao card, to communicate with Guo Fuminkiang or to transport things between the two sides. But most of the incense was used for Yang Zhao's cultivation. She has been using incense to practice a technique, incense casting divine body. This technique can use incense to consolidate her soul, allowing Yang Zhao to use some tricks of the Shinto from the key training stage, to summon the little beam people by summoning believers. Every little beam person who came over has generated immeasurable incense and economic value for Yang Zhao. Another benefit of incense casting divine body is that it allows Yang Zhao to avoid some spells that target people's souls. Originally, the incense generated by millions of fans was enough for Yang Zhao to use, and there was even a lot of surplus. Now that she really uses incense to practice, Yang Zhao knows what it means to feel distressed. But she didn't feel distressed until the evening, when Yang Zhao flipped through her phone to shoot a video to earn incense. She found that her account had gained more than 100,000 fans in just a few days. You should know that her account has always been limited, and the number of followers that increase every day is basically fixed. It was only a few days ago that it reached 1 million with great difficulty. She never looked at the quality of the videos or the number of updates to increase her followers, but whether there was anyone opening the floodgates. The current fluctuation in fans must have been opened by someone, and it was a big flood. Sure enough, when she opened her eyes again the next morning, her account had gained more than 50,000 followers overnight. Chapter 421. Guo Fuminkiang opened the floodgates for him when he didn't say anything. When he thought of this, Yang Zhao felt a little happy. It feels good to be cared for by others. However, it seems that, although neither party said it clearly about the incense, Guo Fuminkiang also knew about it and kept a polite distance. This is a very comfortable distance. Yang Zhao was still beautiful in the morning, but she couldn't smile anymore after Luan Chuangshan came back at noon. Luan Chuangshan brought a semi-enclosed magic weapon the size of half a house. This is the largest magic weapon Yang Zhao has ever seen except for the flying boat. At that time, Yang Zhao's physical injuries had almost healed. When he came out to watch the excitement, he was shocked by this thing. This large magic weapon is silver grey and translucent, and it is hard to tell what it is made of. It looks a bit like a rectangular tripod, 3 meters long and 1.5 meters wide, with 4 legs half a meter high at the bottom, a container about 1 meter high on top, and a translucent lid. The outside was smooth, and inside there were clumps of soft grey hair half a foot long. Although Yang Zhao didn't know what this thing was for, she had a sense of fate that she would be put inside it when she saw it. The key was that the size was too suitable, and it was hard not to make such an association. Just like when he was a child, the highest standard for evaluating a cabinet was that he could get into it and hide inside. And this magic weapon was a standard one, which could accommodate an adult. As expected, Luan Chuangshan asked Yang Zhao to lie down in it and try it. When he saw her, Yang Zhao looked up at this big thing, and her thoughts could not help but wander around. The sacrifice in some book squeezed into her mind from a forgotten corner. I remember that during the Xia and Shang dynasties, slaves were still popular, and there were also human sacrifices. During the sacrifice, people were boiled in a large cauldron. People's brains always have these strange and dangerous thoughts. With a stomping of his feet, Yang Zhao flipped over and sat on the edge. Do you want to lie down inside? Luan Chuangshan stood below, looking up at Yang Zhao. Yes, lie down inside and try to see if it's comfortable. Oh, she was such a clever little ghost, she guessed it right. However, there shouldn't be a fire under this magic weapon to cook herself. Weird thoughts kept popping up in her mind, and Yang Zhao tried to lie down inside. It's a bit hard and chilly inside here. Because there's no pillow, it's very uncomfortable to lie down inside. And the hair on the top of the head looks cute from the outside, but it feels a bit creepy when you lie down inside. These words were long-winded, and to Shen Ruoyu, they didn't sound like a Taoist at all, but a bit like a young lady from a wealthy family, who was picky about this and that. For ordinary people, it's good to have some grass on the kang, and not everyone can afford cotton and quilts. In terms of food and accommodation, Taoists pay attention to taking things as they come, and they can enjoy the good and endure the bad. But Luan Chuangshan went to record Yang Zhao's feedback in detail. Don't worry, I think it will be comfortable for you inside. Yang Zhao Wen'an, who was originally a little bit curious, suddenly felt dizzy. Since Dr. Luan Chuangshan wanted to make this thing comfortable, it meant that she would lie in it for a long time. If it was short, who would care whether it was comfortable or not? After all the bedding and pillows were prepared, Yang Zhao lay in it and felt what hell was for the first time. Someone gave me advice, saying that the protagonist should not suffer so much, and even if he suffered so much, it should not be written in too much detail. There is no sense of substitution. So now I just keep it simple and don't describe it in detail, or I won't write it next time. Chapter 422. In a word, Yang Zhao's cultivation is still too slow. According to Luan Chuangshan, he borrowed this magic weapon with favors, and he has to pay it back. Of course, he also spent 500 taels of silver on rent. And this magic weapon is called Chao. Yang Zhao will sleep here from now on. The name is a bit strange, but it is indeed a magic weapon, to assist people in cultivation. After the magic weapon Anchao is activated, it will automatically swallow the surrounding spiritual energy and pour it into Yang Zhao's body. How to pour it? Hey, the dense hair on it is useful. Once activated, the hair will automatically stretch and pierce into the flesh. This process is somewhat challenging to human brain nerves and creepy, but it is not so painful. Afterwards, it will leave a body full of dense red dots, and even no blood will come out. It is scary. It is really scary, but it is really effective. Yang Zhao uses incense to replace spiritual energy from the inside to the outside, while this magic weapon is from the outside to the inside. Every day, Yang Zhao feels like she has been reborn. But anyone who wants to take a shortcut has to pay a price. Although this thing does not cause any physical pain, it will corrode the mind. Yang Zhao tried it, and when she used it, there was always someone mumbling in her ear. They muttered about the grievances Yang Zhao had suffered since childhood, about the injustice of her parents, about the injustice of society, and about the injustice of heaven and earth. In short, all the embarrassing things, troubles, and unfair things that Yang Zhao had experienced since she was a child. Even the little thing, when she wet the kang, when she was a child, were dug up. In fact, the previous troubles and unfair things are nothing to Yang Zhao, who has now completely broken free from her original environment. For example, the pressure of exams, employment pressure, and the stressful modern society. Both men and women want to marry the god of wealth, regardless of whether Zhao Gangming recognizes him or not. Yang Zhao has now cultivated herself and achieved financial freedom. She has jumped out of the past and no longer cares about those things. But whenever she thinks of embarrassing things, she feels ashamed. Moreover, this person named Anchao seemed to be able to evolve himself. When he found that those things were ineffective, he began to attack her character. Reckless, impulsive, possessed by demons, injured, blocked on the road, plus the endless nightmares of killing. After 2 days, Yang Zhao no longer wanted to sleep and just wanted to stay awake to get through this time. Facing Yang Zhao's low spirit, Shenryu had no good solution. That magic weapon always talks in my ear. It's too annoying. Can't it stop? Shenryu sighed slightly. That's not about the magic weapon, it's about cultivation. The speed of your cultivation in the past 10 days is equivalent to your years of hard work, but the growth of strength requires sufficient mind to control it. He turned the silver conch in his hand, and the crisp sound slowly flowed in the room. The reason why you feel someone is talking to you is that your instinct is warning you again. These words were mysterious, and Yang Zhao's slow brain was a little slow to react. Why? Shenryu, children holding knives will hurt themselves and others. What does this have to do with her cultivation? She didn't react, and the political commissar Xiaodaran who was accompanying Yang Zhao was a little anxious. Senior Shen, can you let me talk to Yang Zhao? We are about the same age. There is no generation gap. Shenryu pondered the word generation gap, and nodded and went out. He never liked to be alone with Yang Zhao in a room, even if there was a Xiaodaran in the room. Maybe Xiaodaran was not considered a person in his eyes. I was thinking about it, and I was very entangled these days. Chapter 423. In fact, at your age, you have never been exposed to any heavy weapons, so it is normal that you don't understand this aspect. As soon as the little bean man political commissar spoke, Yang Zhao's already confused mind became even more confused. We were talking about cultivation. Why did we bring up heavy weapons? It's the same. Whether it's a child or an adult, as long as it's a human, when the power of the weapon in his hand increases, there will be problems. This weapon is partly illusory or real. For example, you know that on the other side of the ocean, in their hearts, guns are to protect themselves, but in fact most people can't bear the weight of this weapon. The little bean man political commissar sighed. After having this thing in hand, it not only encourages people's courage, but also desires, the desire to dominate the life and death of others. The same is true for power. It is also a weapon, a power. When many people first come to power, they think they will do something, but many people will be buried by power, hurting others and themselves. And the spell of this power is not only reflected in one person, but also in the group. From a small company to a large country, the growth of power will inevitably bring about the growth of desire, without exception. Yang Zhao's drowsy mind finally had some light. But am I progressing too fast? The speed is a bit unscientific. The little bean man political commissar looked at Yang Zhao strangely. Does cultivation still talk about science? Yang Zhao was stunned by the question from the political commissar Xiaodaran. Yes, there are gods in cultivation. So why bother about science? After that, she had to take an hour-long ideological class every morning, and sing songs, run, play with guns, and so on around the campfire with the little movers, before going to bed at night. The ideological class started with the Tao Te Ching, and the second book was on cultivation. Of course, these were not taught by the political commissar Xiaodaran, but videos recorded by professors found by Guo Fuminamum Kailang. Before this time, Shenroi would come to the room in person to take charge. When teaching the Tao Te Ching, after the class was completed, Shenroi would also tell Yang Zhao a few words about how his master taught him at the time and his understanding over the years. After so many years, your annotations to the Tao Te Ching are very different from ours. There was a lot of emotion in one sentence. Not only about time, but also about fate. When it came to the second book, on cultivating Taoism, Shenroi, who always kept her emotions to herself, lost her composure. Her eyes were bright, and she would clap her hands and exclaim when she heard something exciting. After that, she found a pen, ink, paper and inkstone, and wrote down the words word by word on paper. She would occasionally read the book. Even the silver conch Yang Zhao gave her fell out of favor. Every time she gained something, she would discuss it with Yang Zhao and express her dissatisfaction with her learning attitude. This is to polish your character and let you recognize yourself. You have to devote yourself wholeheartedly, instead of being a monk for a day and ringing the bell for a day. Yang Zhao was also helpless about this, but she had developed the habit of studying since she was a child. She would write it down first for the exam. As for understanding this matter, it would often take 4 or 5 years before she could feel 1 or 2 sentences. But this learning attitude obviously did not meet the requirements of Shenroi's master. So after each class, Shenroi would drag Xiaodaran to discuss with Yang Zhao. It must be said that the more you discuss learning, the more you can take it to heart. Just like that, under the dual pressure of body and mind, 1 month later, Yang Zhao was able to form a pill. Chapter 424. Obviously, Yang Zhao, whose meridians were incomplete, could not be relied upon to form the elixir, but it was not a difficult task for her, because she had a token of the opening of the Xianfu given by the city Lord Zhao of Xinyuan City. This token could help people form the elixir, and it was invaluable. This token Yang Zhao had always hoped that she would never need. Now it became the hammer for her to beat the drum of victory, and it was very important. A few days before leaving, because the spiritual power in her body was already sufficient, Yang Zhao finally escaped from the hell of being assisted by Shenroi and the magic weapon to practice, and she relaxed for a few days. Once her restrictions were loosened, all kinds of things were slapped on Yang Zhao's face. Even if Yang Zhao did not take care of things, she was still the nominal master of the Black Pearl Island. The first was the Ten Tower, a semi-official organization that had been left alone by the Black Pearl Island for more than a month. If it were not for the great god Shenryu, the supervisors of the Black Pearl Island would have wanted to find Yang Zhao to solve this matter. In fact, there were two main things. One was to pay the money for this expedition. The second is whether to renew the contract. If you want to renew the contract, you have to pay the wages of the spies first. Yang Zhao gave a definite answer in front of the Xiao Dao people and the supervisor. She asked a supervisor named Wang to take a few Xiao Dao people with enough silver and take a flying boat to Yunshan City to handle this matter. This supervisor Wang is very young and has never had the opportunity to get close to Yang Zhao before. But this time in the reconstruction of the town, this supervisor Wang performed very well and was pushed in front of Yang Zhao by the Xiao Dao people. According to the Xiao Dao people, there are still differences in levels in such a small place as Hesu Island, and it is not possible not to mention newcomers. After this matter is done, the next thing is that the masters who came to the flying boat factory to drive the flying boat want to go back. They have been in Hesu Island for several months and have trained a group of people who can control the flying boat. Now they should retire. In fact, they wanted to leave a long time ago. Before the pirates came, they wanted to fly away from this vortex. It was Yang Zhao who used silver to knock these people down. It was also Xiaodaran who persuaded them with his emotions, reasoning, careful service and warm hospitality. After all, Yang Zhao and Xiaodaran had no intuitive feeling about pirates at that time. What if this was a place where pirates were killed and killed, and they were used to leaving no pirates behind? Then these flying boats would be the last escape tool for the people on the island. And who would trust the people who drive these tools to a group of novices? So in the days before the pirates came, these flying boats were hidden in the densely planted areas inland of the island, and only one or two were left next to the town for emergency. Now that they are leaving, Yang Zhao can't keep them any longer, so he asked Xiaodaran to calculate the wages and bonuses of these people, and then pay them an extra half month's wages. The above things are easy to solve, but the following things are a headache. A large pile of account books fell on the table. Property loss status table of each town on the island after the pirates. Food statistics table of each town on the island. Casualties status table of each town on the island. Loss status table of the KMAIC field formation. Material trading table of Sahai Trading Company. Post-war commendation and reward personnel table. Although the pages of the books were compiled by the Little Beam people in both Chinese and foreign languages as simply as possible, it still gave Yang Zhao a headache. She once again wanted a helper. Although the Little Beam people were very useful, their physical condition determined that they could not gain the respect and trust of the workers and supervisors on the island. Chapter 425. Even if Yang Zhao didn't have to calculate these accounts one by one, it would still be enough to give him a headache. After sorting out these accounts, she showed up in various sea towns. At this time, new wooden houses had been built in the town. Compared with the past, the new town was straight and horizontal, leaving wide enough roads and public toilets. The compacted road surface was accompanied by a reserved ditch with spring water from the island flowing in it. Even the garbage dump was divided into several areas. The whole town was clean and tidy, which was refreshing. The town in the past was more like a slum with straw huts piled up, crowded together in a disorderly manner. Now it finally looks like a village in Yang Zhao's common sense. Of course, compacting the ground is a big project. With the current production as the first task of Hesu Island, there is really no way to spare so many people to carry out this work. Don't count on the Xiao Dao people. With their small bodies, do you still expect them to tamp the soil? So the Xiao Dao people outsourced this work to the monks on the island. Facts have proved that these monks are better than steamrollers on Hesu Island. They only need to move their fingers to transfer the spiritual power in their bodies, and they can use the small control to mobilize the magical energy of the cultivation world to complete some tasks that are difficult for mortals to do. Yang Zhao looked at the scene in front of him and inevitably missed home. Even if no one in the Red County Shenzhou can practice, they can build tall buildings and create peace in the world with their own hands. They can reach the moon in the sky and catch turtles in the 5 oceans. Human beings can create their own miracles, no matter where they are. In the hot sun in the afternoon, groups of children ran barefoot in the town, and their laughter blew through the whole town like bells, blowing away Yang Zhao's homesickness. When they gathered together to sing in the evening, several flying boats brought a group of children to Zhentao town. They wore the best clothes they could get, and their dark faces showed an excited blush. They lined up nervously and made a few strange noises and couldn't suppress their laughter from time to time. Several flying boats connected the children in Zhentao town, and there were more than 80 children gathered together, waiting for the bonfire to start. The workers in Zhentao town also gathered one after another. Then a performance with military characteristics began. All the actors were children, and most of them sang. Some 3 or 5 children sang "Unity is Strength" by knocking on wood, and some more than a dozen children lined up neatly and performed military boxing. There were also people singing folk songs from the cultivation world, and some performing 3 sentences and a half. Although there was no instrumental accompaniment for this performance, and there were always mistakes due to the nervousness of the young actors, the applause around them never stopped. The parents present did not hesitate to give these children the warmest response. Yang Zhao didn't know about this at first, and it was a pleasant surprise for her. The little bean man political commissar who followed Yang Zhao would lower his voice and say a few words to her from time to time. The economic losses caused by the pirates this time are relatively large. Even if we have made special subsidies, the workers on the island still suffered huge losses, and the atmosphere of the entire island is relatively depressing. His voice was suppressed by the noise around him. If it was before he practiced, Yang Zhao couldn't tell what the little bean man political commissar was saying without shouting at the top of his voice. That's why we organized this art performance, to sweep away the dull atmosphere on the island. Zhentao town is the first one, and in the next few days, the other towns will have one. Do the parents of these children agree? After all, it takes time for these children to practice, and the children of poor people don't have much time to play. When they grow up, they have to do a lot of work to help their parents support the family. We teach these children to recognize words in our spare time as compensation. Yang Zhao smiled. This is the charm of knowledge, attracting the attention of all intelligent creatures. Before going to bed at night, at the reminder of Xiaodaran, Yang Zhao put the Dao card behind her mobile phone and received a large video message from her brother Yang Yun. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.